Little ball, banana pear, mullein flower 21, 256, 257, 282931, 356, 357, 383,941. On the road, Tian, Yanbing, and Xiaoyuer are not alone. A few children like mud monkeys are running around them. They sing nursery rhymes with their childish but happy voices and look at them with their big black eyes. When their eyes meet, they shy away with a smile. The innocent children's voice, shy children, with the fresh air in the mountains, make people have a feeling of coming to the world. Little ball, banana pear. Tian couldn't help squinting his eyes and humming in a low voice. When Yang Bo and Aunt Yang were still at Mu's home, and he often came to the capital with his mother, Yang Bo taught him the same nursery rhyme. Thinking of this, he turned to look at some children and said, "Is this song taught by Yang Bo?" "Grandfather Yang taught it. Grandfather Yang is very kind to us. He often gives us food." The children nodded with a smile and said, "It's really Uncle Yang. He has no children all his life, but he likes children very much. Only he can treat other people's children like this." Tian smell speech, face immediately become more rich, without any hesitation, stride toward the east of the village. A moment later, Tian goes through rows of two-story buildings or bungalows, and finally comes to a tile-roofed house. The tile-roofed house is very old. There is no courtyard wall, but a fence made of bamboo poles. There is a hole in the roof, which is covered with plastic sheet. It is very old and dilapidated. However, both in the yard and on the roof, they are clean, and there are no weeds. The old man is hardworking and clean. At this time, in the yard, an old man with white hair and a bent back was lighting a stove in the yard. His hands were weathered and covered with rough wrinkles. Moreover, the old man's body seemed not very good. When he put the dry wood into the stove, he always shivered and coughed. However, his voice is very small, as if for fear of disturbing someone. "Uncle Yang." When Qin Hao saw the old man, the corner of his eye suddenly became moist. In front of him, when he was a child, when he went to Mu's house, when his grandfather and mother were busy, he often took him and made a lot of delicious food for him. When his cousins bullied him, Yang Bo kept him behind. It's just that he has grown up now, and Uncle Yang has grown old. I can see that he hasn't had a good time these years. He looks very old. "Grandfather Yang, someone is looking for you." Don't wait for Tian to open his mouth to call. A few children are looking at Yang Bo's direction, loud voice way. When Yang Bo heard these children's voices, he turned his head tremblingly. Immediately, his eyes fell on Tian, Yanbing, and Xiaoyuer. After staring at them for a circle, his eyes still fell on Tian. After staring at his cheek again and again, he couldn't believe it and murmured, "Xiao Tian." "Yang Bo, it's me." Tian's voice, also a little trembling, aloud, and then quickly walked into the yard, to meet the old man. "It's really Xiao Tian, it's really you. I can't recognize you when I grow up so big." When Yang Bo saw Tian, he habitually wanted to raise his hand and touch Tian's cheek. But when he just lifted it up and saw the ashes on his hand, he quickly dropped his hand and stared at Tian. His voice was shaking and murmured. Not only that, when he spoke, 2 lines of turbid tears came down the corner of his eyes. "Yang Bo, yes, it's me, Tian." Tian nodded with a light smile, raised his hand to grab Yang Bo's hand, put it on his face, and said with a smile, "It's really me, don't believe you touch it. Father, mother and grandfather have passed away. The blood of the Mu family is as cold as ice. Now in this world, there is only Yang Bo, who is not a relative but a relative. It's Xiao Tian. Yes, it's Xiao Tian. That's right, it's really big. Yang Bo is old. I didn't expect to see you again." Yang Bo touched Tian's cheek, tears completely wet his eyes, mumbling to himself, "I should have come to see you earlier." Tian sighed, holding Yang Bo's hand tightly, and said slowly. At the beginning, after Mu Xiai left the capital, she worried about the fate of Yang Bo and Aunt Yang. She discussed with her father and brought them to Nanhai. Unfortunately, she contacted Mu Chen, but Mu Chen sneered at her, saying that even the servants left by the old man would rob them when they left. Mu Xiai was so angry that she could only let it go. However, she felt that Mu Chen was not good to him at that time, but Yang Bo brought him up and helped him bring up his son. The fragrance is still very deep and strong. It should not be difficult for the two old people. But who could have thought that Mu Chen was so cold-blooded that he drove the two old people out? Ye Tian believes that if she had known this would be the case, her mother would have ignored it and rushed to Nanhai for the first time to pick up the two old people. What about Miss and Uncle? The two of them, didn't they come? At this time, Yang Bo wiped the corner of his eyes and looked behind Yi Tian, looking for someone. They're gone. Yi Tian lowers his head, looks sad and murmurs. Even if his soul is strong and he remembers the reincarnation of Emperor Dan, he is still a child in front of Yang Bo. When Yang Bo heard the sound, he was stunned for a moment. His face was full of tears. His lips moved for a long time, but he couldn't say a word. Finally, he touched Yi Tian's head and murmured, "Child, you are suffering. It's okay. I'm living well now. I've avenged their enemies, too." Yi Tianshang smiles, shakes his head, and then says, "Uncle Yang, we have been talking for such a long time. Why don't we see Aunt Yang? How is she? Is she still strong?" At that time, in Beijing, not only Uncle Yang was kind to him, but Aunt Yang also loved him very much, and that kind of love was not pretended, but from the bottom of my heart, just like taking him as a real grandson. Although he was young at that time, he could still feel whether a person was sincere or false to a person. She's in the house." When Yang Bo heard this, he looked a little dejected. He raised his hand, wiped his eyes with his sleeve, and took Yi Tian to the room. As he walked, he said, "A few years ago, your Aunt Yang had a serious illness. Your Uncle Yang had no skill and didn't cure it in time. Later, he couldn't get out of bed. He hasn't woken up yet. A few years ago I'm afraid that's when Zhang Ying said that Yang Bo went to find her." Hearing this, Yi Tian's heart immediately shook. Then he held Yang Bo's arm and walked quickly to the room. Inside the room, it was cramped but tidy. Although there was a bedridden patient, there was no peculiar smell in the room. Not only that, at the head of the bed, in an enamel jar, there was a small bunch of wildflowers blooming. Obviously, Uncle Yang takes good care of Aunt Yang who was bedridden, but even so, Yan Bing and Xiao Yue are worried about the two old people. If Yi Tian hadn't come here, I'm afraid that with Yang Bo Gang's physical condition, they wouldn't be able to take care of Aunt Yang for too long. Yi Tian's face is also very ugly. He even began to regret when he was in the Mu family. Too light, should be more ruthless punishment. Zhang Ying, they just right. This kind of treatment to the two old people who brought them up and helped them bring up their children is not as good as brute. You are. The movement outside the house had already awakened Aunt Yang. When she saw Yi Tian, her turbid eyes immediately showed the color of memory, such as trying to recall something. A moment later, she trembled and raised her hand, murmuring, "You are Xiao Tian, Mrs. Xiao Tian." "Aunt Yang." Yi Tian choked, lowered his waist and held the old man's hands tightly. Even if time is like running water, many years have passed, but the two old people still have not forgotten him, still remember him. They are not relatives, but they are more intimate than those who are really bleeding like blood. "Good boy, don't cry." Aunt Yang trembles and raises her hand, trying to wipe the tears from Yi Tian's eyes. Yan Bing and Xiao Yue look at the scene in front of them. They can't help but turn their heads and their eyes are moist. After going through the Mu family, I met those callous people with similar blood. I saw Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, who had no blood relationship with Yi Tianming, but still remembered him. The contrast was too strong. The feeling of reunion after a long separation was even more touching. "You're back, Miss and Uncle?" Aunt Yang turns her head and looks behind Yi Tian. She seems to want to see the little girl she brought up with her. "The two of them are gone." Yi Tian murmurs slowly. Aunt Yang was stunned immediately when she heard this. She held Yi Tian's hand tightly. Her lips moved back and forth. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't say a word. Finally, tears ran down the corner of her eyes and got wet. "Auntie Yang, it's been a long time. Don't worry. I'm doing well now." Yi Tian held the old man's hand tightly and said in a soothing voice. That's good, miss. I didn't even see the last face of Miss." Aunt Yang nodded repeatedly, but the sadness on her face couldn't be hidden at all. Her tears continued to flow and choked. Yang Bo stood beside them, his face full of tears, and he also thought of the little girl who used to be around them. Tian tightly pursed his lips, looking at the two old people. His mind was very complicated. He went to the Mu family, but the people in the Mu family didn't mention the death of his parents. They didn't ask why they died young. They didn't ask whether Tian had a good time or not after his parents passed away, and they didn't see a tear. Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, I didn't cheat you. I'm really enjoying myself. This time I came to Beijing to see you. I'm late. After a long time, Tian how easily relieved the two old people's grief, and then sat on the edge of the bed, holding an old man's hand in one hand, sighed to them, then looked at Uncle Yang and said, Uncle Yang, I heard Zhang Ying say that you went to see her a few years ago. Was it for Aunt Yang's sake? That year, your Aunt Yang suddenly felt sick, and the situation was not very good. I really had no choice but to go back and see if they could help us, but they drove me out. They said that in the past few years, we took care of them, and the Mu family paid for them. They had already cleared up. They called me a greedy white-eyed wolf. Yang Bo wanted to shake his head, but looking at Tian's bright eyes, he finally nodded, and then said, I asked her for the contact information of the young lady. I wanted to find her, but when I mentioned the young lady, she was even more angry. She scolded me and drove me out. Zhang Ying, damn it. Tian clenched his teeth, his fists creaked, and his blood rushed to his forehead. Although he has guessed the truth of the matter is so, but these words, from the mouth of Yang Bo, still let him can't accept. At that time, Uncle Yang took care of them. Although grandfather did pay them, at that time, because grandfather's business was on the rise, when he was most short of money, Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang took the initiative to find grandfather and told him not to have so much money. They gave him the money again and asked him to do his business first. Moreover, even his grandfather later compensated Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, but Yang Bo and Aunt Yang loved Mu Chen and Mu Mao so much that they really regarded them as their own sons. The money that his grandfather compensated for them had already been given to them and bought things for them. Now, Zhang Ying has the face to say that she has paid her wages, so she doesn't have to worry about it. To be a man, you can be cold-blooded, but how can you be so cold-blooded? At this moment, he even wanted to rush back to the capital, break into Mu's house, pull those wolf-hearted guys in front of Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, and make them kneel down to apologize. Lao Yang, Lao Yang, where are the people? Just like your wife, paralyzed in the house? But just then, along the outside of the house, there was a cold whimper. The voice, with a stream of ridicule and disdain, and the voice is full of air. It should sound like a few middle-aged people in the village. Xiao Tian, I'll go out and have a look. Yang Bo hears this voice, the facial expression obviously becomes ugly, but follow closely, he is facing Leaf Day to show a smiling face, Wei. Yang Bo, I'll accompany you. Tian is not stupid. When he hears that voice, he knows that Yang Bo is in trouble. But it's no wonder that a couple of childless old people, and an old man paralyzed in bed, are bullied no matter which village they are in. But now, he came, no matter what it was, he would use his own hands to support Yang Bo and Aunt Yang. The people of Mu family don't care, but he can't. Yang Bo wanted to shake his head, but he couldn't beat Tian. He could only let him help him and walked out of the room. Old man Yang, how are you thinking about it? Tian and Yang Bo just went out. Standing outside the fence, the middle-aged man with a cigarette in his mouth asked. As soon as the words came out, he saw that there were more people around Yang Bo. He looked at them carefully and thought that they were angry. He said with a smile, Oh, old Yang, you have a guest in your house, rare guest. But you're the top peerless man. Nobody's been in charge for so many years. How can someone come to see you all of a sudden? Who is this man? He. Yang Bo opens his mouth, but he doesn't know how to introduce Tian. Tian calls him Uncle Yang, but in fact, he is a member of Tian's grandfather generation in terms of seniority. It doesn't matter who I am. Just remember that I'm a relative of Uncle Yang. Tian hears the sound and looks at the middle-aged man. When Yang Bo heard the words, he couldn't help looking at Tian. His face was full of sigh and emotion. He didn't know how many years he hadn't heard the words relatives. Also, I advise you to brush your teeth frequently if your mouth stinks. Otherwise, you may stink yourself one day before you smoke others to death. Next, Tian looks at the middle-aged man with a cigarette in his mouth. He says coldly in a tone of indifference. In his words, he has more chances to kill. Oh, young man, I'm not old enough, but I'm very angry. The middle-aged man with a cigarette in his mouth heard Tian's words, his face immediately sank, and then he flicked the cigarette in towards the yard. Looking at Uncle Yang, he said impatiently, Old man Yang, how was the matter I asked you last time? Let me tell you, when you are old, you have to be old. You are a top man. No one cares about you. How nice it is to live in peace. Why do you have to be so stubborn? It's not so good for us to look down and not look up, isn't it? That's right. Old man Yang, brother Lu Hua wants your land to build a garage. He thinks highly of you, and he has said that he is willing to give you 10,000 yuan. Do you think it's worth 10,000 yuan just for your kennel? You are really taking advantage of the big fat. 10,000 yuan is enough for your old couple. A village person, you ran out for so many years and didn't come back. When you come back, it's good that everyone is willing to return the house to you. You're so stiff. You can tell me if you bump in the village or accidentally fly into the house when cooking. No one will send you to the hospital or help you put out the fire. When that happens, what will you and Mrs. Yang do? I'll tell you, don't feel like shaking again just because someone came to see you. No matter how horizontal they are in the city, they are in the city. In our Lujiazwan, we all have to listen to our old Lius. Even if they come back from outside, they have to be honest with me. The middle-aged man's words fell down, and the two young men who followed him immediately made fun of him. At the end of the speech, they even put on a threatening tone. It seems that as long as Yang Bo doesn't honestly hand over the house and wait for him, it may be an unintentional slip wrestling, or a spark burning the house. Lu Feng, anyway, your father and I were all friends growing up together. When I was in the city, your father met with something, and I didn't give a little help. When you got married, I also gave your father money. Up to now, your father has never mentioned these things, and I haven't said anything as you know about Aunt Yang and me. This house is worthless, but you only give me 10,000 yuan. Where do you want us to live? Hearing the sound, Yang Bo's face turned blue and white. Then he looked at him, half angry and half helpless. You helped my dad? When I got married, did you take money for my family? Old man Yang, I didn't hear that wrong. Just like you, do you still help our family? Ha ha ha. What's more, even if there's something about Chen Guzi's rotten sesame, you can also mention it. Come on, talk about how much money you gave my father at the beginning, 1,000 or 500. Let's count it out and I'll give it to you. As for your house, if you think 10,000 is too cheap, how about 5,000? When Lu Feng heard Yang Bo's words, he burst out laughing and turned back and forth. When Yang Bo heard the sound, he was so angry that he shivered and breathed heavily. Finally, he covered his mouth and coughed. Seeing this, Tian helps Yang Bo smooth his back and looks at Lu Feng coldly. When his grandfather was alive, Yang Bo was in the Mu family. He did have a salary and could save some money. However, at that time, 100 yuan was almost equal to 500 yuan or more. Now, Lu Feng wants to use the current price to compensate Yang Bo. This heart is really darker than ink. What's more, Yang Bo was kind-hearted to help Lu Feng's family. Lu Feng didn't care about his old love, but threatened them with the words that killed Yang Bo and Aunt Yang. What's more, this guy is not only a black heart, but also a wolf heart. It's just a matter of a few hundred yuan. You can talk about it. Let's give it to you. But the past is the past, and the present is the present. What's the use of you two old coffins guarding this dilapidated house? 10,000 yuan is enough to buy 2 coffins. We are all from the same village. Why are you so unkind? Your house is full of air and rain. Brother Lu is willing to give you 10,000 yuan. It's already an old love affair. You are so ungrateful and stiff. Everyone looks down and doesn't look up. Do you think it's good? If you two have a headache and need to go to the hospital, do you think we will send you or not? Lu Fang's words fell down, and the gangsters who followed him also followed. What's more, it's obviously a matter of extortion. When it comes to these people's mouths, it turns into something that seems to be good for Uncle Yang. If Uncle Yang doesn't agree, it means he doesn't care about the friendship of a village. Don't blame them for being rude to Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang in the future. Fart, you bastards, what's your plan? Do you think I don't know? Our village is going to develop tourism recently. You think I haven't heard of someone coming here to build B&B and develop scenic spots? Although my house is dilapidated, it's the most beautiful place in our village. If you take away 10,000 yuan from me, you can sell it for 100,000 yuan. If I don't make it clear to you, I'm thinking about the friendship of a village. How dare you say that? Listening to these words, Yang Bo couldn't bear it. He was completely angry. He reached for a bamboo stick beside him and threw it heavily on the ground. He said, "Today I'll leave my words here. I won't sell this house. Even if I die, I won't sell it to you. You get out of here now, otherwise, don't blame me for fighting with you with sticks. Why are you so stubborn, old man? At your age, half of your foot is in the earth, and you still have to work hard with us, not to mention taking a stick, even a knife. Can you stab me to death?" Lu Fang laughs, looks at Yang Bo holding the stick appearance, sneers repeatedly. "Yes, you're a poor old man. We're here to talk business with you. Do you want to kill us? I ask you, why are you so stubborn? What's the point of keeping this piece of land for your old couple as a graveyard? People in a village have to work hard. I see that you are the typical one. It's not the old man who was getting worse, it's the bad man who was getting older. I said that you two used to stay well in the city. How could you be driven back like a dog? It seems that you have been driven back by others for doing bad things." The village people, who looked like gangsters, also laughed at them. Although these guys are all from the village, they are not as simple and honest as people in the village should be. On the contrary, they speak with a good accent. They are sour runners. They even put them on the side of justice and put words on Uncle Yang. Just like, thousands of mistakes, not other people's fault, are Yang Bo's fault. You get out of here, or I'll kill you." When Yang Bo heard what they had said when they came back from the city, he was furious. He raised the bamboo stick in his hand and scolded angrily. "Come on, fight here. If you don't kill me today, I'll follow your surname. But I'd like to see if you beat me to death today, who will take care of the paralyzed old woman in the house for you in the future." Lu Fang was not afraid at all. He put his head into the fence and pointed to his brain door, laughing. Yang Bo trembled all over, raised the bamboo stick, but could not fall down. Lu Fang is sure that he is only alone, but also to take care of Aunt Yang this, so dare to treat him so unscrupulously. "Ha ha ha, I'm a dead old man. I don't have the guts, do I?" Lu Fang laughed at this. "Yang Bo, don't be angry. They are just trying to annoy you and make you sick. Since I'm here, let me handle these things." Tian sees this and looks coldly at Lu Fang. Then he reaches out and pats Yang Bo's hand. Wen Sheng says. At the same time, he stepped forward to Lu Fang and others. "Boy, what do you want to do? I tell you, this is Lu Jiazhuang. All the people in the village, except these two old people, are surnamed Lu. You'd better weigh up before you want to do something." Lu Fang is obviously a bully. See Tian come over, and a head is very high, quickly back a step, vigilant stare at him, threat way. These people, relying on the fact that this is Lu Jiazhuang, are all surnamed Lu, so they come to bully Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. Tian sneered and looked down. After sweeping several people's cheeks, he said faintly, "They are all villagers of the same village. Two old people are in trouble now. They have no relatives. It's really nothing if they don't take care of them. But you come here to bully them. Is your conscience eaten by the dog? Oh, boy, you're young and you're quite blunt. I ask you, who are you? What's in charge of our village? I tell you, there's no business for you here. Don't mix it up. Don't be arrogant in front of us because you are young. A hairy boy in the city, how heavy are your arms? You are honest. Otherwise, don't blame us if you hurt anything. Lu Fang and others immediately look at Yi Tian with a sneer and a threat in their tone. They don't pay attention to him at all. Xiao Tian, call the police. The police will decide for us. Yang Bushing is afraid of Yi Tian's loss, so he comes forward and whispers to him. Don't worry, Uncle Yang. I can't see any more of them. Today, I will get justice for you. What's more, it's too frustrating to call the police. Yi Tian looks at Yang Bo and smiles, soft voice way. On the surface, he was calm and gentle, but in his heart, there were waves. Yang Bo and Aunt Yang are usually friendly, but now they are bullied like this. If he doesn't come back, where will they go? And how many times have such scenes happened in the past? At this moment, Yi Tian's killing intention is boiling in his heart. If he didn't know that the time and place were wrong, and he couldn't fight in front of Uncle Yang, he would have been unable to restrain his intention to kill. Ha ha ha, this boy is too funny to talk about. Who does he think he is? With his thin arms and legs, he still wants to seek justice? When Lu Fang heard Yi Tian's words, he covered his stomach and laughed wildly, as if he had heard the funniest thing in the world. I'll give you a chance to apologize to Yang Bo immediately, then slap yourself 100 times, and then you can go away. Yi Tian toward Lu Fang and others after a light glance, eyes cold and frightening, light way. Damn, boy, you're bragging and addicted, aren't you? Or do you want us to apologize for being kicked in the head by the donkey at the entrance of the village? Do you want us to slap ourselves 100 times? We just don't apologize. What can you do to us? Just like you are so thin, I can poke you over with one finger. Lu Fang's several strong men, looking at Yi Tian's appearance, scolded and sneered. Since you don't want to apologize, I'll have to help you. Kneel down. Yi Tian's words are calm. He takes the bamboo stick from Yang Bo's hand and sweeps it in front of him. In a flash, a terrible wind swept forward immediately. Lu Fang and others didn't have time to dodge. They felt like they were bitten by a poisonous snake on their feet. A terrible pain swept through their whole body and made them show their teeth. Bang bang bang. In the next second, it was extremely rampant. It seemed that at the end of the day, apart from the King of Heaven, Laozi was the biggest, and they were the second. Immediately, they fell forward and knelt down on the ground in front of Uncle Yang. Ah! Not only that, after kneeling on the ground, along their mouth, there were bursts of shrill howls like killing pigs. The pain was so terrible that they felt that their ankles were about to split at this moment. However, they really don't understand how a thin bamboo stick can have such a big and terrible lethality. When they were young, they had not been smoked by their family members with bamboo sticks. The pain returned to the pain, but at most they had 2 bloodstains, so it would not be any better. But the small bamboo stick in Yi Tian's hand is even more terrible than the solid steel pipe. But they didn't know that with the cultivation strength of the 6th floor of Yi Tian's cave, even if it's not enough to fly flowers and pick leaves, it can hurt people. But when a bamboo stick comes to his hand, it's no less powerful than a solid steel tube under the infusion of mana. Under the terrible pain, they hold their hands to the ground and want to stand up. Bang! But at this time, the bamboo stick in Yi Tian's hand was shaking again, and the roaring wind swept across again. This time, it was no longer their ankles, but their wrists. Ah! In an instant, there was a black bruise on the wrists of these people, and the bruise was still swelling. In a short time, the swelling was almost as thick as the calf. I'm afraid that the bone on the wrists had split at this moment. This scene, even Yang Bo was stunned. He turned his head and looked at Yi Tian, shocked. He really didn't expect that when he was a child, the little guy who looked soft became so powerful now. When a bamboo stick came into his hand, it could burst out with such terrible and amazing lethality. Slap yourself in the face and apologize. And at this time, Yi Tian looks at these people a word, cold scold away. Old man Yang is beating people. Old man Yang is beating people. The people of the Yang family are bullying the people of the Lu family. All the old and young men in the village, come here quickly. Old man Yang's relatives are going to kill people. Come on. When Lu Fang and his followers heard Yi Tian's words, they immediately raised their voices and began to call people. Who is it? It's just right. Let's call all the people here. Today I just want everyone to see what it's like to bully my Uncle Yang. Yi Tian heard this, not only did not have any panic, but looked at Lu Fang with a cold smile. After that, he went back to the house, moved out a chair, put it in the center, supported Yang Bo's arm, and said, Yang Bo, do it. Look, Xiao Tian is doing justice for your old people today. Ask these people for a statement. Xiao Tian, let's go. It's not worth it for me. Hurry up, I'll help you stop those people. Yang Bo's face is full of panic. He waves to Yi Tian and is about to get up and send Yi Tian away. The village is no better than the city, especially in the village like Lujiazwan. All the people who live in the village have the same surname, and they are basically relatives. When a family is bullied, all the people with the same surname will rush to make trouble. This is one of the reasons why Lu Fang dares to be so unscrupulous in front of Yang Bo, because Yang Bo has no relatives and belongs to a unique family name in the village. Even if he is bullied to death, no one dares to speak for them. Even if he can't see it, he and Lu Fang are all the same family name. If he helps Yang Bo speak, he will be rejected by his peers in the future. The relationship will also consider repeatedly, dare not speak disorderly. Moreover, although Yi Tian is very good at fighting, there is a saying that 2 fists are hard to beat 4 hands. Even if Yi Tian can fight again, can he fight the whole village alone? Don't worry, Uncle Yang. Don't be afraid. Yi Tian put his hand on Yang Bo's shoulder and pressed him on the chair. At this time, Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer also picked Aunt Yang up from the bed, put her on the chair, wrapped her legs in a quilt, carried her out and put her beside Uncle Yang. Boy, he won't listen to me. Please help me persuade him. Let him go. Don't make trouble for us. Seeing Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer coming out, Yang Bo looks at them in a hurry and says in a deep voice. Boys and girls, we're old couple, but there's really no need to do this for us. Go away quickly. Aunt Yang is also wiping tears, looking at Yi Tian, is moved, is anxious, very worried about what trouble Yi Tian will encounter. The two of them have always been like this. No matter what it is, the first thing they think about is others, and the last thing they think about is themselves. Uncle Yang, Aunt Yang, don't worry. Yi Tian will be fine. Just wait to see a good play. But what Yang Bo and Aunt Yang didn't expect is that Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer didn't show a nervous look to persuade Yi Tian when they heard their words. On the contrary, they took time to comfort them. Yang Bo and Aunt Yang were flustered and shocked. They really don't understand where these children come from. Who is bullying our old Lius? What's the matter with you, Dad? Who is so cruel as to break their hands and feet? Son, my son, who beat you like this? What a cruel heart. At this time, the people of Lujiazwan had rushed over. When they saw the appearance of Lu Fang, they rushed out of the crowd crying for heaven and earth and threw themselves on Lu Fang. They swore and roared. Boy, you dare to beat people in our Lujiazwan, don't you want to live? Immediately kneel down to apologize, and then pay for the medical expenses, otherwise, we will tell you to come in vertically and go out horizontally. Those young men who are slightly younger and shovel on their shoulders are staring at the leaves with angry faces. They seem to be at the edge of any time. I did. Yi Tian glanced at everyone and said faintly, you only see your son and husband being bullied. Then I ask you, are you usually blind? Didn't you see how they bullied my uncle and Aunt Yang? They have a large number of adults, and they don't want to see the same thing as you rotten people. Today, I have to help them get justice and settle a good account. How dare you tell us to settle accounts? Let's settle with you first. With the voice of Yi Tian, a young man who seems to be good at the relationship with Lu Fang, and the crowd rushed over with his shovel. He was rushing to the leaf sky, and his face was full of fierce roar. Xiao Tian. Yang Bo saw this scene, immediately flustered God, in a hurry to push Yi Tian aside. Shua! But at this time, before Yang Bo's hand touched Yi Tian was already a lunge. He dodged to one side and immediately followed. His hand was suddenly raised, and the bamboo pole he held in his hand was tilted upward. Bang crackle, let everyone appear in a sudden appearance. Suddenly, the heavy shovel fell heavily, and it was broken into two pieces, the shovel head soaring up, and fell heavily in the distant land. Bang! Put on fall on the ground face down shovel. Terrified bamboo pole knocked on the head of the young man who was shocked by the spade broken into two parts. With the sound of a clear sound, the young man fell down on the ground and fell a dog eating shit. Not only that, he fell to the ground, the whole person is immediately stiff, straight lying on the ground, even do not move. This fierce scene, let those originally carrying shovel and hoe of Lu Zhuang people, the body cannot help but one time, panic watching Tian. What a thing a shovel they can't do is to understand what a person is. They can knock a shovel handle into two parts by a single bamboo pole. They can knock a robust and strong living man and a stick into the ground and be unable to save themselves. This power is really terrible, and it is totally beyond their understanding. I killed someone. If you have killed someone, call the police immediately, and arrest him for me. Pay off the debt, kill and die. If you kill, wait and die. But the next second, a few women in the back immediately pointed to Tian, yelling Niba loud clamor more than. Catch Tian? I think it's to arrest you people, right? We have just taken the video with our mobile phone. He took a shovel and tried to attack Tian. He was forced to take up his helplessness and rebelled against him. He knew how to beat bamboo poles so lightly. He knew he was so knocked off, he just knocked him down. He told me that he wanted to find a porcelain leaf. But don't wait for Tian to open his mouth. Yan Bing, standing behind him, smiles coldly and looks at those women playfully. Well said, I also think he is touching porcelain. Xiao Yuer's eyes rolled around and echoed. You two little bitches are young. How can you be so mean? You can say that. Touch porcelain, have you ever seen such a person lying on the ground with no reaction? Also self-defense. He's bleeding his head, and he's lost so much water. Is there such self-defense? Those women stem neck to rush out, looking at Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer to scold not only. Yes? Let's call the police. Let the police take a look at the video. They believe in Tian holding a bamboo stick, or believe this guy who carries a shovel in his hand. Xiao Yuer sneered and said faintly. You I'm going to tear up your mouth, take off the clothes of these two cheap girls and let them be famous. What shovel is, Yan Bing's and Xiao Yuer's words are, no matter who, they will not believe that a little bamboo stick has such a great destructive power. And the bamboo stick and spade are more destructive than the shovel. Even if the police come, they will think Tian is justified in defense. Surely, they would think that they were touching porcelain. Thinking of this, their faces immediately changed. After looking at each other, they all drank angrily and rushed to Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer. These shrews are used to fighting in the village. They are afraid of Tian, who is very powerful at first sight, but they are not afraid of Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer, who are both women. Moreover, as far as they think, even if the two yellow-haired girls are added together, their combat effectiveness is not as good as any of them. 3 ants, 4 ants, come on, strip them all. Let them show their faces. Yes, tear up all the clothes on them. They should be famous for such shameless things. Seeing this group of women's actions, the men behind them immediately showed evil light and yelled at each other. Many people even raised their mobile phones and aimed at Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer, trying to take pictures of them being pulled off their clothes by these shrews and showing their enchanting figures. When they just came here, these people focused on Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer. They have lived in the village for many years. They have never seen such charming beauties. They are just like walking down from the TV. They plan to clean up Tian and have a good time, and now, since these shrews want to rush up and strip away Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer's clothes, how can they not be excited and cheer loudly? In a flash, these shrews rushed to Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer's side, stretched out their hands and pulled their clothes with a grim smile. 3 ants, 4 ants, come on, settle them down, I'll buy you a drink later. I'd like to see what kind of body these two bitches have under their skin to be so vicious. Those onlookers, one by one shortness of breath, while shouting, while staring, raised their mobile phones, for fear of missing a little wonderful play. You really don't know what to do. Yan Bing sees the appearance of these guys, sneers, raises his head abruptly, and punches the shrew who pours at her in the heart. With a dull sound of bang, the shrew's body shook and immediately widened her eyes. Her mouth was so open that she could fit into a duck's egg. She shook in place and collapsed to the ground. Bang! Then, along Xiaoyuer's side, there was a dull thump. Immediately, a shrew's body, like a broken kite, flew high. This how could it be in a flash? The old and young men in Lu Jiazhuang immediately opened their mouths in the shape of O, full of panic and shock. You know, 3 ants and 4 ants are all king-level figures in Lu Jiazhuang shrew world. No matter they quarrel or fight, they are absolutely at the top of the pyramid and are invincible all over Lu Jiazhuang. They always thought that they were the only ones who could defeat the 2 heavenly kings. Can think of, strong and more strong in hand, invincible 2 heavenly kings, to Yanbing and Xiaoyuer in front of, unexpectedly is only obediently suffer. Whoa! 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 Not only that, Yanbing and Xiaoyuer, after solving the 2 king of shrew world, did not stop, hand forward suddenly, their clothes, like pieces of paper, were torn into pieces. For a moment, rags flying all over the sky, 2 bulky and drooping body, immediately appeared in front of everyone. This scene is so hot that people have doubts about life. Oh! My eyes, who will save my eyes? In an instant, countless villagers in Lu Jiazhuang are about to regret their intestines. What they want to see is the moving body of a young girl. It's not the bloated and drooping body of the 2 old ladies, full of all kinds of fat. Just to look at it makes people feel terrible and lose interest in life. Even, they want to take 2 pots of water, put their heads in, wash their eyes well, and forget the filth. Ah! As for the 2 shrews, at this moment, they hold their hands tightly in front of their chest and howl bitterly. Looking at Yanbing and Xiaoyuer's eyes, they are full of panic. At this moment, they are fully aware that their 2 so-called valiant, in front of the 2 girls, is just a paper tiger. How dare you be so arrogant even if you don't know what to do? Yanbing and Xiaoyuer smile coldly, shake their hands gently, and then throw out those fierce shrews. After landing, they are like meatworms, struggling and wriggling on the ground. How can they see and how ugly they are? How can these 2 girls around Tian be so powerful? This scene, not to mention the villagers in Lu Jiazhuang, were stunned. Even Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang were completely stupid. They couldn't believe that the 2 girls, who looked thin and weak, thin and delicate, and pretty, had so much strength and were so cruel. But where do they know that Yanbing and Xiaoyuer are really beautiful and delicate, but they are also mountain people? They are powerful. Even among mountain people, they are little experts. With their skill and strength, to deal with these shrews is like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. Let alone only a few of them, even if there are more, those who are waiting for these shrews will come to the same end. Anyone else, want to come up? Then Yanbing and Xiaoyuer look at the other shrews, look coldly and scold. A word falls, those shrews are submissive, although full of resentment, but no one dares to move forward. They are not stupid, or can't see, these 3 people are not easy to provoke. If they come up, I'm afraid they are self-humiliating. Kneel down and slap each one 100 times. Give Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang an apology. I can let bygones be bygones. At this time, Tian glances at these people, word by word, coldly way. These people in Lu Jiazhuang used to bully Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. They had no children and no one to take care of them. They were old and frail. They didn't know how many vicious things they had done to them and how many ugly words they had said. He didn't know these things in the past, but now, since he knows, he has to seek justice for Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. Let's get down on our knees. Don't dream anymore we can't beat them alone, but they may not be our opponents if we fight together. Let's fight together. Yes, let's go up together and wait to see who kneels down and apologizes to whom. There are so many of us. If we go together, even if something goes wrong, we will not blame the public for the law. To his face, heard the eyes of the villagers, and the villagers saw the evil color in their eyes. Then they shouted loudly, holding shovel and other sharp weapons in their hands, and rushed to the leaf sky to turn him over. Up to now, you still don't understand. Is it useful to have more people? A joke. Seeing this, Tian shakes his head and smiles indifferently. He immediately turns to Yanbing and Xiaoyuer and says, you 2 don't have to interfere. I'll deal with the next thing. When Yanbing and Xiaoyuer heard this, they reluctantly stepped back. Gongwei was beside Yang Bo and Ant Yang. Shua. Immediately after that, Tian takes a step forward, and the bamboo stick in his hand swings gently, bringing up a misty shadow of the stick. Click 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 to his face, suddenly cracked, and then followed, the spades and other sharp weapons that the villagers had shoveled down, and were immediately stopped by a stick. The iron at the first end was like raindrops falling down the ground. This scene made the villagers who thought that we could win together, absolutely stupid. No matter who thought, Tian can only shovel all the spades in his hand with a thin bamboo stick. Shwa! At this time, Tian's hand trembled, and a shadow of the stick roared out again, just like beating a dog, and fell on the ankles of the villagers. Ah, my feet! Pain, pain, it's killing me! All of a sudden, with bursts of crackling and howling, the villagers who came from the siege all fell to the ground, holding their swollen ankles one by one, and howling bitterly. Do you want to come again? Tian directly ignores these shrill howls, looks at the rest of the villagers and says. While those villagers were swept away by Tian's eyes. The body immediately struck a shiver, and the shovel and other objects in the hand immediately threw the ground. Whoosh! At about the same time, Tian's hand trembled slightly, and the bamboo stick flew out of the crowd with a fierce wind, and fell heavily on a poplar in the distance. When the bamboo stick touched the poplar, it was like a sharp blade falling on the tender bean curd. It directly penetrated the old poplar with a thick clasp, and then shot out. He smashed it on a huge rock and smashed it into pieces and fell to the ground. He who on earth is he? This horrible scene made the floor fall into the extreme silence for a moment. Many people even raised their hands and touched their heads after looking at the old poplar and the big stone. It seemed that they were measuring which one of their heads was stronger than the poplar and the stone. Even the villagers, whose ankles were broken by Tian, forgot to howl miserably. They just looked at Tian and trembled violently. They really can't understand how Tian's hand can burst out such a terrible and amazing power. Such a person is no longer like a person, but like a god above. Now, how are you thinking? Immediately after, Tian glanced at the villagers who were stunned in the same place, light way. Put on, put on, put on. Crackle, crackle, crackle. After a word fell, the villagers looked at each other, but they didn't know who took the lead. One by one, they knelt down on the ground just like dumplings. Then they raised their hands, bit their teeth, and immediately turned to their faces and gave a heavy blow. Uncle Yang, Aunt Yang, do you want to relieve Qi? Tian looked down at the scene, sneered twice, then went to Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, looked at them, warm voice way. Jiechi Jiechi. Looking at this scene, Yang Bo and Aunt Yang couldn't help thinking back to the scenes when they were bullied in the village before. They were sour in their hearts. They raised their hands, wiped the corners of their eyes, and then nodded. This scene, being bullied by these vicious guys, they have fantasized for countless times, but they always feel that it is impossible. After all, they have 2 old arms and legs. The Mu family has already abandoned them and won't stand out for them. How can anyone do justice for them? But none of them thought that such a thing could happen in front of them one day. And all this is because of the child they brought for a period of time in the past, who had no blood relationship with them, but was better than their relatives. It's good to relieve Qi. Let's laugh and live well. We'll have a good life in the future. Tian smiles and nods to Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. Then he turns his head and looks at the villagers who are slapping in the face. He says faintly, which is Lu Feng's home? The most magnificent 3-story building in the village is. At this moment, where do these people dare to hide something from Tian? In a hurry, they point to a 3-story building in the distance and say. Good. Tian nodded, then looked at Lu Feng and said, don't you like to tear down other people's houses? In that case, I'll let you know today what it's like to have a house demolished. Zheng. With one word, Tian waved his sword, and the fierce sword came out of the scabbard, turned into a streamer and swept away to the 3-story building of Lu Feng. Boom! 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 The fierce swords are unparalleled. Even the alloy can be easily cut into 2 pieces. What's more, the red brick houses are only a few flashes of light. Next to them, the original three-story building, like a paper paste, shakes a few times. In a moment, the gravel bricks crash to the ground, shaking the ground and splashing smoke and dust. The house collapsed. This scene completely made the villagers of Lujiazhuang look silly. They really can't understand that Yi Tian just waved his hand so gently. How could Lu Fang's three-story building collapse like a paper paste in mud, and become a terrible ruin? My house, my house. Lu Fang looked at the house, which had been turned into a pile of cement and red brick ruins. After a long time, he burst into tears. This house was built by him after he wasted a lot of effort. It is also a well-known luxury house in the village. Living in it, standing on the third floor overlooking the whole village, he always feels like a local emperor in the village. But now, all these things have turned into ruins, and all his efforts have become the water moon bubble that no longer exists. Wow! After howling for a long time, Lu Fang opened his mouth, and a mass of scarlet flew out and landed on the ground. When his house was destroyed, his painstaking efforts came to nothing, and his family was going to be homeless, which made him unable to accept. To the extreme, he had to cough up blood. Originally, you also know the house is destroyed, can let a person grieve? Yi Tian's hand moves gently. After putting the fierce sword into the storage ring, he looks down and spits out a mouthful of blood. His face is pale. He looks like Lu Fang, who is dozens of years old. He knew that the best way to deal with Lu Fang was to copy what he had done to others to himself. Only in this way could they feel the real pain and understand how terrible it was when they hurt others. Even if you tear down my house, our village will soon be developed for tourism. Even if it turns into ruins, I can still sell it for a lot of money. The house was destroyed, let Lu Fang completely arouse the anger in the heart, regardless of anything, stare big scarlet eyes, looking at Yi Tian, ferocious way. Is it? Hearing this, Yi Tian smiles. Then he turns to look at the rest of the villagers and says, who is going to develop tourism in your village? It's said that it's the Han family in the capital. Their family is very powerful. They say they want to build this place into an ecotourism village for the aged. Those villagers did not dare to hide and told Yi Tian the answer. Han family? The Leaf Day hears a sound, the corner of the mouth can't help but peep out a smile of amusing. Yes, it's the Han family. Han family in Beijing, can you afford that? Let me tell you, the people of the Han family have contacted me, and they are still the young master of the Han family, Han Xiaofeng. They're going to inject a lot of money into it. What if you demolish the house? With land, I can still be a rich man. Lu Fang stares at scarlet eyes and roars madly at Yi Tian. Rich man? Keep dreaming. Yi Tian looks at Lu Fang and smiles faintly. Then he takes out his mobile phone and dials Qi Chuanxing's phone casually. He says faintly, President Qi, you should have Han Xiaofeng's contact information. Give him a call and say I'll wait for him in Lujiazhuang. If you don't see him in half an hour, you'll be responsible for the consequences. Take the consequences. Lu Fang listens to Yi Tian's words, scarlet eyes, can't help showing the color of disbelief. What is the Han family? That's one of the top tycoons in the capital. Who is Han Xiaofeng? That's the future successor of the Han family. But now, in Yi Tian's mouth, it's like Han Xiaofeng is his dog. If you ask him to come, he'll have to come, and there won't be any delay. I tell you, don't pretend there. Who is Han Xiao? He will be afraid of you? Thinking of this, Lu Fang immediately sneers and shakes his head, and finds that Yi Tian is putting on airs and deliberately yells at himself. Half an hour, soon, wait slowly. Yi Tian smiles indifferently, and then looks around at the villagers who are also full of suspicious looks. He says faintly, you'd better remember that it's his action that makes you miss an opportunity to turn a poor mountain village into a tourist attraction. The villagers' expressions were changeable. In an instant, their hearts were hanging to their throat. Even, many people looked at Lu Fang and complained. You know, since the news spread that the village is going to become a tourism development zone, many of them have regarded this as a major turning point in their lives, and fantasized about turning over from poor mountain villagers to rich families. Moreover, in order to cooperate with the tourism development, or to get more compensation, many villagers do not hesitate to borrow money, or renovate their houses, or cover their houses with several floors. If the development of tourism really fails, then the hard work of these people, as well as the money they have paid, will become nothing. Don't listen to his nonsense. No matter how powerful he is, how can he mobilize such a big man as Han's family? Seeing the look of the villagers, Lu Fang immediately became nervous and yelled. He knows that if things in the tourism development zone fail, these villagers will vent their anger on him if they dare not provoke Tian. When he was in the village, he would be like a rat in the street, and everyone would fight. I'm afraid that the situation he faced would be even more miserable than that of Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. After all, Yang Bo and Aunt Yang are just bullies, but he has cut off people's money. In China, there is a saying that it is like killing a parent to cut off a person's fortune. It's not so easy to stop killing your parents. At this moment, Lu Fang prayed silently in his heart, hoping that Yi Tian's words were frightening him, and Han Xiaofeng would not appear here. Boom boom, half an hour passed quickly. Just when Lu Fang felt that he had escaped, a terrible roar of propellers came from the sky. Then a helicopter suddenly appeared over the village. Why did the helicopter come all of a sudden? It can't be that Han Xiao, is he really here? Certainly not him. Our family borrowed a lot of money to renovate the house. If we don't develop it, what shall we do? God bless, don't be that Han Xiao, even if it is, don't destroy the development here. The sudden appearance of the helicopter immediately made the villagers feel that the big stone hanging on their chest suddenly flew to their throat. They were all thirsty and restless. Many people began to pray to the gods and Buddhas all over the sky, hoping to be blessed. Shula. And just then, along the helicopter, suddenly a heavy rope dropped down, followed by a young man holding the lock, with bursts of shrill cry, jumped from the rope. It was like that he was extremely afraid of this action, but because of what he was afraid of, he could only force himself to endure that fear. The sound. Lu Fang listened to the shrill howl, and suddenly felt a little familiar. Then he saw the familiar figure, a heart hanging in his throat, and suddenly sank down, just as he was going to sink into the bottomless abyss, and his whole body would turn into a terrible piece of ice. This voice, this figure, in addition to Han Xiaofeng, which can be? Yi Tian makes a phone call, and Han Xiaofeng comes here by helicopter. He also resists the fear in his heart, grabs the rope and jumps off the helicopter. What does it mean? He is not a fool. How can he not be clear? However, he really can't understand what identity Yi Tian is. He can make Han Xiaofeng so afraid. As far as he knows, Yang Bo and Aunt Yang used to work as nannies in the Mu family in the capital. The Mu family is just a small family. How can there be such a phone call, which makes Han Xiaofeng a big man in a hurry? Poop. At this time, Han Xiaofeng had already grasped the rope and fell on the ground, but he could not care about the pain. He turned his head and looked around. When he saw Yeho not far away, he immediately struggled to get up from the ground and ran to Ian. He bowed 90 degrees with a flattering smile and said, "Brother Yi, I'm sorry I'm late." It's not too late. There's a minute and a half to go. You can step on the right spot. Yi Tian heard the sound, looked at the next time, and then looked at Han Xiaofeng, light way. Thank you for your understanding. Han Xiaofeng felt a sigh of relief when he heard the news. He only felt that the pain he had just jumped down from the plane with a rope was all worth it. After a smile, he raised his hand and wiped the dripping sweat on his forehead. After receiving Qi Chuanqing's phone call, his courage almost broke. He immediately prepared to drive to Lujiazhuang. But he went down to remind him that it was easy to get stuck in traffic in Beijing. It was unrealistic to come to Lujiazhuang in half an hour. The only way was to fly a helicopter. After hearing this, without any hesitation, he quickly contacted a helicopter to come. All the way, it was not more than half an hour that Yi Tian said. I heard that you plan to build a tourism development zone here? Yi Tian waved his hand at will, and then said calmly to Han Xiaofeng. Han Xiaofeng heard this, quickly nodded, and then said, "This place has beautiful scenery, and it's close to the capital, so I plan to build a leisure healthcare and elderly care base here, and build the kind of forest oxygen bar village." Brother Yi, if you are interested, I will help you manage this project. Han Xiaofeng is a fool, but he has business sense. Hearing this, Yi Tian looks at Han Xiaofeng in surprise. Lujiazhuang is a place with beautiful scenery, good air and unobstructed roads. It is very suitable for those old people who have worked all their lives in the capital and want to find a quiet and comfortable place for their old age, or white-collar workers who are used to 9-to-5 life. Come here to experience the rural customs, breathe fresh air and have a short rest. It's a pity that although Lujiazhuang has occupied all the advantages of these days and places, people, and this is completely destroyed by Lu Feng. Take this project? I'm not interested. Yi Tian hears the sound, shrugs his shoulders, then looks at Han Xiaofeng and says faintly, stop this project. Yes, ah. Han Xiaofeng nodded without thinking, but as soon as the words were spoken, he couldn't help but stay and stare at Yi Tian. He really doesn't understand how Yi Tian suddenly cares about such a small resort. If you want to know why, ask him. Yi Tian smiles indifferently, and then picks his chin toward Lu Feng. Lu Feng? Han Xiaofeng hears the news, turns his head and sweeps aside. Only then can he see that Lu Feng is squatting on the ground. His head is like a bloody gourd, and his eyes are red, just like who killed his parents. Han Xiao, it's me, I'm Xiao Lu. Hearing this, Lu Feng immediately started to smile and nodded. Then he pointed to Yi Tian and said, Han Xiao, don't listen to this guy. He's just a member of the Mu family. He's nothing. As long as our holiday village is open, it will be a profitable business. What's more, we've all agreed. I've started to help you close your house and develop it here. What is not the Mu family? Han Xiaofeng is confused by Lu Feng's words, but he is still acutely aware that Yi Tian may have something to do with Lu Feng. In other words, Lu Feng, who has no idea of life or death, provokes Yi Tian because of the house collection. At the thought of this, Han Xiaofeng's sweat just fell down on his forehead, shua, then all climbed up on his forehead. Is he collecting your house for you? Do those things at your command? At this time, Yi Tian looks at Han Xiaofeng playfully and asks faintly. Poop. With one word, Han Xiaofeng immediately shivered and fell on his knees in front of Yi Tian. He put up his finger and swore, Brother Yi, you believe me. What's going on here has nothing to do with me. I'm just planning to develop tourism here. I'm not planning to do anything about forced demolition and forced sale. Moreover, it's just the beginning of planning. I haven't written a word yet, and it hasn't been officially confirmed. On your knees. Han Xiao knelt down to Yi Tian. This scene made Lu Feng's whole body tremble suddenly, and his mouth was so open that he could almost insert a big goose egg. He never thought that Han Xiaofeng, who was so high and noble in front of them, was so humble in front of Qin Hao. In order to make Yi Tian believe his words, he did not hesitate to swear and even knelt down in fear. Not only him, but also the villagers of Lujiazhuang are staring at Han Xiaofeng and Yi Tian in amazement. Moreover, an extremely bad premonition is constantly lingering in their hearts, and an extremely unacceptable answer seems to be coming out. What's the matter with his words? Leaf Day picks eyebrow to smile, Jin Dynasty Willow Square pick to pick, like way. Son of a bitch, how dare you accuse me? When did I tell you that I wanted you to tear down other people's houses? When did I tell you that I want you to drive others out? Hearing this, Han Xiaofeng got up from the ground and turned to look at Lu Feng. After a roar of gnashing his teeth, he couldn't help saying that. With a sudden kick, he kicked Lu Feng's chest heavily and made him stagger on the ground for several times. Lu Feng, I'll tell you, I won't play in the development of your poor village. Who the hell do you want to go to? You are not the only village around the capital. Next, Han Xiaofeng pointed to Lu Feng and cheered coldly. Han Xiao, you can't do this, you promised me, you said, to develop here. Lu Feng was so anxious that he struggled to get up from the ground and was about to hold Han Xiaofeng's thigh. If, for his reasons, the village originally planned to be developed is suddenly not developed, it is strange that these villagers who have suffered huge losses will not swallow him alive. After all, no matter how close the blood relationship is, there is no money to do it. Not to mention that his house has been destroyed by Yi Tian. If it is not developed, the land will not be sold, he will be homeless in the future. His family will be small and old. Let's sleep in a shack. When did I promise you? Have we made a contract? Did you write in black and white? No, what's more, even if there is, you have violated the contract by forcing me to dismantle and buy behind my back. I can still break the contract without responsibility. I will not develop this village. Han Xiaofeng's fear of Yi Tian doesn't mean that he is afraid of Lu Feng. After hearing this, he immediately sneers at him and says nothing. As he said, not to mention the so-called development, it's just a plan that hasn't been implemented yet. Even if the contract has been signed, as long as Lu Feng offends Yi Tian, he will not hesitate to break the contract and take care of the broken village and whether Lu Feng is alive or dead. No development? Why not develop it? I borrowed money to renovate our house. If it's not developed, what can I do? It's over, I want to become a rich man's dream. It can only be a dream, woo. In a flash, all the villagers in Lujiazhuang were boiling. There was a strong sense of despair in everyone's face and eyes, especially those who borrowed money to renovate their houses. They looked dull and lost their souls. Yi Tian looks at these lost villagers indifferently and sneers. These people, bullying Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, are lonely and helpless. They want to take advantage of the two old people. Now that he is here, they should let these people know that those who are cheap are not so easy to take advantage of. If they reach out to take advantage of others, they have to be prepared to be cut off. Do you have a villa with a better location? As long as it's right, the price is not a problem. Closely following, Yi Tian turns to look at Han Xiaofeng. Light asks away. Brother Yi, do you want to buy a villa? Han Xiaofeng smell speech, hastily accompany smile way. Not me. With a faint smile, Yi Tian turns to look at Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, and says in a warm voice, Uncle Yang, Aunt, I'll take you to live in a villa in the capital city. Take you to live in villa in Beijing. When Yi Tian's words fell, the villagers of Lujiazhuang immediately became silent. They looked at Uncle Yang and Aunt Yan with blood-red eyes. The light of envy in their eyes almost turned into substance. Why are they so eager for Han Xiaofeng to continue to develop the village? They don't want to live a life where they can make money and enjoy themselves. Now, Han Xiaofeng is going to stop the development project of Lujiazhuang, and their dream of making money and enjoying life here is a complete failure. However, Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, who were bullied by them in the past and considered very bad by them, are now going to follow Yi Tian to live in a villa in the capital. Living in a villa in Beijing is something they even dream about. But now, the things they dream about happen to the two lonely old people they despise most. How can this huge gap not make people feel envious and jealous? It turned out that I was going to live for my uncle and aunt. It's easy to say that I have a nice villa in Shanghai, so I took it out to honor the two old people. Han Xiaofeng is a dandy. Although he is stupid, he is very clever in dealing with people. When he heard what Yi Tian said to Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, he immediately reflected that these two old people, who Yi Tian should attach great importance to, immediately showed a smile to the two old people, nodded and said with a smile. Villa in China Sea? As soon as Han Xiaofeng said this, the villagers in Lujiazhuang immediately felt as if they had been squeezed with 10,000 lemons. They were so sour that they had to turn their teeth. They live under the root of the imperial city. They have never heard of Shanghai. It's the best place in the capital. The people who can live there are rich or expensive. If they dream about living in villas in the capital, they dare not even dream about the villas in Shanghai. No, you can give me a price. I'll do a transfer. Yi Tian shook his head, looking at Han Xiaofeng lightway. He knew that as long as he had a word, Han Xiaofeng would not hesitate to contribute to the villa. But he did not want Yang Bo and Aunt Yang to live in other people's houses, but hoped that the two old people would live in their own houses and take care of them instead of their mother and grandfather. Brother Yi, you just look down on me. I'm so filial to the two old people. I don't know what money is. When Han Xiaofeng heard this, he waved his hand again and again in a hurry, but he saw the playful smile on Yi Tian's face. He immediately put away this greasy look with an embarrassed smile, looked at Yi Tian, and whispered, that villa was bought by my family for 100 million yuan, ready to be used as a wedding room for me. 1 billion. Well, when we get to the capital, I'll give you 1,050,000,000. Let's prepare for the handover. Yi Tian nodded at Will, light way. Thank you, Brother Yi, thank you, Brother Yi. Han Xiaofeng, hearing the news, hastily nodded his head and bowed his waist to thank Yi Tianlian. But in his heart, he laughed bitterly. The villa is worth 100 million yuan, but it can't be bought with money. It needs some special ways. It belongs to the kind that can be met but can't be asked for. However, to be able to help Yi Tian do something in exchange for his favor, Han Xiaofeng thinks it's worth it. After all, as long as Yi Tian lives in the villa, he will know the way in it. At that time, he will be remembered. His past gratitude and resentment should be written off. 1 billion. At this moment, the villagers of Lujiazhuang have lost their voice completely. Their heads are completely confused. They don't know how many zeros there are behind 1 billion. And they dare not imagine, a billion villas, and the luxury to what kind of amazing situation. I'm afraid that even the Lingxiao Hall where the Jade Emperor lives is just like this. And people who can live in such villas, I'm afraid, even if they dream, they can also wake up with laughter. Now, Yang Bo and Auntie Yang, who are despised by them, are going to move out and live in this luxurious villa to live a noble life. At the same time, at this moment, they are also fully aware that Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, in Yi Tian's heart, the weight is really very heavy. However, they really don't understand what kind of kindness will make Yi Tian so good to the two old people. But how do they know that in today's world, all the relatives and elders that Yi Tian cared about in the past are no longer alive? Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang are the only two elders he still cares about in this world. No matter how good he is to these two old people, let alone living in 1 billion villas for them, even living in 10 billion villas is nothing. If we can let those people he cares about come back to this world, even if we ask him to give 10 billion, 100 billion, what is it? Child. Not to mention these people, even Yang Bo is dull, staring at Yi Tian. He knew that the boy standing beside him now was no longer the child of the past. But even so, he did not expect that the child who was thrown with snowballs in the snow and was full of tears had grown up to such a stage. If he didn't know that neither Yi Tian's grandfather nor Mu Xiai was a boaster, plus Han Xiaofeng's servile endorsement, he would almost think that Yi Tiangong's words were deliberately envied by the people in the village. Uncle Yang, Aunt Yang, you don't have to say anymore. I've decided that I won't change. In the days to come, you'll be waiting to enjoy your happiness. In other days, you'll have me. Yi Tian waved his hand, interrupted Yang Bo and Aunt Yang's words, holding their hands, warm voice way. Good, good. Yang Bo and Aunt Yang choked. Finally, they raised their sleeves to wipe the corners of their eyes and cried. They can see that Yi Tian is sincere and hopes to make them both better. Although Lujiazhuang is their hometown, the land is hard and the heart is cold. They hope to stay with Yi Tian. Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, we are all from the countryside. Please say a good word for us and continue to develop our village. Otherwise, we are really finished. Uncle, when I was a child, you often held me. Please, in terms of past love, just say a few good words for us. I really don't know anything about the past. I was hoodwinked by Lu Feng. You can rest assured that I will repay you well in the future. Yes, Uncle Yang, please, just ask for a favor for us. We also want to have a good day. Do you think it's better to call our place Yangjiazhuang instead of Lujiazhuang in the future? At this time, the villagers of Lujiazhuang also gathered around. You say a word, I say a word, a snivel, a tear toward Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, praying repeatedly, hoping that the two old people can use compassion, say Yi Tian, change their mind, give them a way to live. Now I think of my fellow villagers. Now I think of what Uncle Yang did to you. Don't you think it's a little late? Now I want to expose everything in a few words. Don't you think it's too easy? Yi Tian sneers and sniffs. It's very good that these people, after they have done evil, want to make a mistake in a single word. It's a pity that he just wanted to let these people have a taste of their own brewing. Uncle Yang, Aunt Yang. Listening to Yi Tian's words, the villagers were embarrassed one by one, but they were still thick-skinned and prayed to Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. Ladies and gentlemen, you used to tell us that we were helpless and didn't listen to you. After we died, we didn't even have a person to help us. Yang Bo looked at the familiar but strange faces. After a little silence, he shook his head with a smile and said slowly, "Now that we have people to rely on, we naturally follow what you say and listen to the people we depend on. What will you do with us? All of you, please help yourself. Live happily." Yang Bo's words fell, and the villagers in Lujiazwan were completely dumbfounded. No matter who just begged to Yang Bo, he didn't expect that Yang Bo would refuse them so easily. And the next second, in their eyes, there was a strong color of despair. Now, they have taken the village development as their only hope. Many families have borrowed a lot of money from the bank to carry out renovation. The hope is that they can make more compensation in case of demolition to their own home, or make some money in the form of farmhouse entertainment after tourism development. But now, Han Xiaofeng decided not to develop the village anymore, which means that all their early investment will be wasted. However, the tourism development failed. The money they borrowed from the bank has been used up for a long time. The bank will not care whether the village is developed by the development department or not, and will not ask them for the loan because the village is not developed. If they can't afford to pay back the money, I'm afraid all the things they have taken out as collateral will come to nothing. At that time, I'm afraid the fate of those people who are waiting for them is very different from that of Lu Feng. Either they will end up homeless, or they will stop dreaming of making money while lying down. No matter you are 70 or 80, or young people, they all go out to work and sell coolies to make money to repay the loan. "Uncle Yang, Aunt Yang, let's go?" Yi Tian's answer to Uncle Yang was somewhat unexpected, but he also felt reasonable. After looking at Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, he said with a smile, "Go, let's go." Yang Bo looked at the shabby house and the desperate faces of the villagers, then nodded without thinking. He has no nostalgia for this place. In other words, the actions of these people in the village have made him extremely disappointed. Although he grew up here, although he was born here and grew up here, his nostalgia has disappeared. If it wasn't for his need to take care of his wife in the past, he would have left here long ago. Even if he was displaced, he could live in this bullied place. In the same way, it is precisely for this reason that he did not hesitate to refuse when the villagers just begged him, because he was used to the ungrateful faces of these people. Clay figurine, there are 3 points of anger. What's more, he is not a clay figurine. The evil consequences planted by these people in Lujiazwan naturally need to be borne by them. My Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang's house belongs to them. If I know who dares to do anything to this house, even if there is damage to every plant and tree, then he will weigh it up and see if his neck is hard or this stone is hard. Yi Tian nodded, then bent down to pick up a stone from the ground, looked around, and in a moment, 5 fingers suddenly started to work. Click click. In a flash, along the palm of Yi Tian's hand, there was a chilling sound of bone stubble. Immediately, the hard black pebble was broken into small pieces like sand. Along the palm of Yi Tian's hand, it fell to the ground. This scene, see Lujiazwan, those villagers, shivering all over, shaking all over, scared looking at Yi Tian, timid nodded. Let's go. After looking at these people, Yang Bo turned and walked to the house, took out the key, locked the door, took the old yellow dog, and put 2 old hens, which were raised to lay eggs for Aunt Yang, into the sack. Then he looked at Yi Tian and said. Looking at the confused old yellow dog and hen who didn't know what had happened, the eyes of the villagers were full of jealousy. As the saying goes, if one person gets the right way, he will be promoted to heaven. When Yang Bo meets Yi Tian, he can live in a villa worth 1 billion yuan. With his old yellow dog and old hen, he can live in a $1 billion mansion and live a life of dog on dog and chicken on chicken. However, these people can only stay in this dilapidated village and continue to be trapped. Good. Yi Tian nodded and winked at Han Xiaofeng. Hearing this, Han Xiaofeng called the pilot of the helicopter and asked him to find an open place to land the helicopter. Immediately, the group boarded and left. Son of a bitch, who are you going to offend? You're going to offend Uncle Yang. You've killed us. Kill you, son of a bitch, Lu Feng. I'll tell you that you've made the development of our village impossible, and our family's money can't be paid back. You can help us pay back the bank loan. Son of a bitch, you've ruined us all, you villain. When Yi Tian and others turn around and leave, they hear the roaring, kicking, and heartbreaking howls coming from behind. All of them pour the anger of the village to Lu Feng. There is no doubt that as long as Lu Feng stays in the village in the future, he will not have a good day and will surely become the object of being despised by everyone. It's not to say that these people are so stupid that they don't understand that all this is caused by Yi Tian, but where do they have the courage to hate Yi Tian? Don't come back, never come back in the future. At the same time, after stepping on the plane, Yang Bo suddenly raised his sleeve and wiped the corners of his eyes with trembling voice. In fact, he has a lot of feelings for the village. After all, he is a child who grew up here. Unfortunately, his former hometown has become a sad place where he never wants to come back. Don't worry, Uncle Yang. If you want to come back to live in the future, I'll have the house renovated and rebuilt. You and Aunt Yang can still come back to live. At that time, no one in the village dares to bully you. Seeing this, Yi Tian holds Yang Bo's hand and says with a smile, "Don't come back." Yang Bo shook his head and looked down at Lu Jiazhuan from a high altitude. Then he looked at Yi Tian and murmured, "Where you live in the future, Aunt Yang and I will be." As far as their old couple are concerned, Yi Tian is their only relative in the world. They don't want to be separated anymore. Whether it's a billion-yuan villa or a shabby little house, it's really a good day to be with the people they care about. Well, we'll be together anyway. Yi Tian nodded with a smile, and then said to Aunt Yang, "Aunt Yang, let me have a look at your legs to see what's wrong. Let's try to make you stand up." When she was young, she worked too hard. When she was old, she suffered from embolism and geriatric disease, so she couldn't stand up. Even if she was sent to the hospital, she couldn't be cured. Yang Bo shook his head and sighed. "Let me try." Yi Tian smiles and shakes his head. He immediately raises Aunt Yang's leg and puts it on his own leg. Then he opens Yuan Tian's eyes. As far as he could see, he immediately saw that, as Yang Bo said, there were many large and small embolism in the blood vessels of Aunt Yang's legs. This kind of embolism prevented the circulation of blood vessels and could not get the nourishment of blood gas. It also directly led to the loss of consciousness and mobility of Aunt Yang's legs. There are so many emboli, and many of them are almost solidified. In addition to Aunt Yang's aging and malnutrition, she can't be treated by surgery. Therefore, even today's medical technology is very developed. The doctors in the hospital can only take medicine to treat Aunt Yang conservatively treatment. It is for this reason that Yang Bo would say that Aunt Yang's leg disease could not be cured even if she was sent to the hospital. However, the hospital cannot cure the leg disease. Yi Tian may not have no way. To be exact, when the moment of determining the condition, he has determined that Aunt Yang will soon be able to go to the ground for activities. "Son, are you studying medicine now?" Looking at Yi Tian's appearance, Yang Bo couldn't help asking curiously. "I didn't study medicine." Yi Tian smiles and shakes his head. Then he looks at Uncle Yang and says with a smile, "Uncle Yang, do you dare to bet with me?" "Let's bet. Aunt Yang can stand up and walk later." "Xiao Tian, don't make fun of your Uncle Yang." Yang Bo's eyes brightened when he heard Yi Tian's words, and his expression was a little excited. But immediately, his expression became dim. Looking at Yi Tian, he shook his head with a bitter smile. In order to treat Aunt Yang, he took her to many big hospitals. It was because of this that he spent all his savings. Although there is no effective treatment, the doctors have also made it clear to him that Aunt Yang's disease is a typical chronic disease. She is old and malnourished. The best way to dredge the thrombus with surgery is no longer available. She can only recuperate slowly. However, the effect of regulating this kind of thing is extremely limited. Yi Tian just showed the means, although very incredible, but he does not think that Yi Tian can cure the old companion's leg disease. "Yang Bo, do you think I am that kind of person?" Yi Tian heard the speech, and shook his head with a smile. Then he said, "Let's make a small bet. If Aunt Yang can walk on the ground later, you can make me a bunch of sugar gourd that I liked most when I was a child. What do you think?" "Xiao Tian, are you really making fun of me?" When Yang Bo heard Yi Tian's words, he became excited and held Yi Tian's hand tightly. He felt a kind of hope from Yi Tian's words. "Tell me if you dare to gamble with me." Yi Tian didn't admit it or deny it, still smiling. Well, I'll bet with you. As long as Aunt Yang can stand up and walk again, I'll take care of all the sugar gourds you want. When you have children, Aunt Yang and I will take care of your children. We'll take care of all the sugar gourds he wants to eat. Yang Bo didn't have any hesitation. He nodded hard. Then he looked at Xiao Yuer and Yan Bing and said. When Xiao Yuer and Yan Bing hear this and see Yang Bo's words again, they can't help but show some blushes on their cheeks, and then show some loss. The falling flowers are purposeful and merciless. Although they are by Yi Tian's side now, they can't get into his heart. Well, let's make a reservation. Yi Tian nodded with a smile, followed closely. He turned to look at Aunt Yang, said, Aunt, wait a little pain, you can bear it. Xiao Tian, don't worry. My aunt is not afraid of pain and can bear it. Aunt Yang nodded, eyes, at this moment, also full of hope and uneasiness. She has been in bed for so many years, but she can't get down to the ground. Especially when she looks at Yang Bo's silver hair and growing old, she is still working hard for her, which makes her heart full of intolerance. I don't know how many times she would like to just close her eyes so as not to drag Yang Bo. But she also knew that Yang Bo attached great importance to love. If he really did something stupid, I'm afraid that even if he didn't follow his own steps to leave, he would live in pain every day, so he insisted on it. Under such circumstances, it can be said that every day and every moment in the past, she is looking forward to the birth of a miracle. But it's a pity that her poor legs still feel nothing, and there is no improvement. If she can continue to walk, a little bit of pain, what can be counted? That's good. I'm ready to start. Yi Tian smiles, and then he opens Yuan Tian's eyes again. Dantian's magic power surges, slowly converges on his hands, and then sticks to Aunt Yang's leg. Is Yi Tian going to cure Aunt Yang's leg disease with his hands? Seeing this scene, the hope in Yang Bo's eyes was a little dim. In order to make Aunt Yang stand up again, he thought of many ways, and massage is one of them, but unfortunately, this method has no effect. Now, Yi Tian wants to treat Aunt Yang in the same way, which is absolutely impossible to succeed. Thrombus obstruction, blood gas is not smooth, then want to recover as before, the way is to break these blocked thrombus. Scalpel can't do it, but my mana can do it. What's more, you don't need to open a knife to smash the thrombus, and you don't need to worry about damaging the blood vessels. Yi Tian is attentive. While determining the method of diagnosis and treatment in his heart, the magic power poured into his hands is like a silver needle, streaming to Aunt Yang's legs. Next breath, it converged in front of the largest and semi-solid viscous thrombus, followed by the thin as cattle hair mana, which suddenly condensed and fell on the thrombus like a drill. Yi Tian's mana is so pure, and his manipulation of mana is so exquisite. When the mana falls, the clot, which was originally thick and almost completely sealed the blood flow, immediately disintegrates like the black pebble he held in his palm, turns into fine powder and mixes into the blood. While the clot breaks, and the blood that's stuck in it immediately surges forward. Well, Aunt Yang has long been used to the cold and numbness brought by the poor blood flow in her legs. At this moment, the blood vessels that had not been moistened by blood for a long time suddenly poured in, which immediately made her feel that the cold and numb leg was suddenly hot, just like a piece of charcoal passing through it, which made her gasp for air. What's the matter with you, my friend? Seeing this, Uncle Yang quickly and nervously grasped Aunt Yang's hand, looked at her and asked in panic. Heat, pain. This sudden warm pain, let Aunt Yang is sweating, pointing to the calf, teeth trembling voice. Ah! Hearing the sound, Yang Bo's eyes widened in an instant. He couldn't believe it. Next breath, he was replaced by a strong ecstasy. You know, since Aunt Yang was in bed, her legs had almost lost consciousness. She was not only unable to get down to the ground, but also had no other feelings except cold and numbness. Even if she was stabbed with a silver needle, she had no reaction at all. But now, she felt the heat and pain. This was the first time after she was in bed. And such a result does not mean that Yi Tian's treatment really has an effect. Hiss. Almost at the same time, Yi Tian used his magic power to conquer a blood clot. The feeling of long absence, which was warm and bloody, made Aunt Yang scalded by the fire. She could not help but breathe cold. At the same time, the sweat on her forehead was more dripping, and her body was shaking violently. Or hot? Does it hurt? Seeing this scene, Yang Bo immediately asked nervously. Well. Aunt Yang nodded difficultly, followed closely, muttered to herself, however, after the end of the heat pain, I feel that my legs are not so heavy. Yi Tian's treatment, there is an effect. When Yang Bo heard this, he almost jumped out of the cabin. He took Aunt Yang to see so many doctors and went to so many places, but although the money was spent, the treatment he got had no effect. But now, Yi Tian makes Aunt Yang's legs, in addition to cold numbness, feel the feeling of heat and pain, and even make her feel that originally because of losing control, her legs become heavy, at this moment, become relaxed. Such a situation is absolutely unprecedented huge improvement. And if he didn't see it with his own eyes and heard it from Aunt Yang, even if he killed him, he couldn't believe it. Whoa! 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 Listening to the conversation between Yang Bo and Aunt Yang, Yi Tian smiles and says nothing. The magic power on his hand is like electricity. According to the guidance of Yuan Tianian, he shuttles through the thrombus on Aunt Yang's legs continuously, turning the blocked embolism one by one into dust, dissolving in the blood. Similarly, with the dissolution of the thrombus, Aunt Yang obviously felt that in addition to cold and numbness, her legs could feel more and more. This unprecedented huge change let her eyes involuntarily become bright. Not only is he, Yang Bo at this moment, is also closely staring at Yi Tian's hands, a heart mentioned the position of the throat, eagerly waiting for an expected result. I don't know how long it's passed. After a thin layer of sweat comes out of Yi Tian's forehead, he slowly raises his hand, looks at Aunt Yang, and says with a smile, Aunt Yang, you can stand up from the wheelchair to try, but you can't deliberately not stand up and play tricks with me because you don't want to let Uncle Yang lose the bet. You child, is Aunt Yang such a person? Aunt Yang listened to Yi Tian's words, her face was full of tears and laughter, but her eyes were full of hope. She turned to Yang Bo, who was also full of hope. After looking at her eyes, she slowly closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and used every moment of every day to think of countless ways to mobilize every nerve in her body, trying to put her feet on the ground. Time is very fast, but at the moment, it becomes very slow, minute by second, like thousands of years. I don't know how long it's passed. Aunt Yang suddenly feels that a familiar but strange sense of firmness comes from her feet. It's a down-to-earth, secure feeling that everyone is most used to, but most reluctant to lose. It's a feeling that she has been looking forward to hundreds of millions of times in her dream, but almost forgotten, and even thinks that she can no longer feel in this life. Yes. Succeed. Your feet move. At the same time, along Aunt Yang's ear, suddenly came the excited voice of Uncle Yang with crying cavity. With this sound, she opened her eyes, and then she saw that her legs and feet, which did not know how long she had lost consciousness, were standing on the floor of the cabin, feeling the heavy feeling brought by the alloy fuselage. And on one side, looking at the scene in front of him, Yang Bo was already in tears, sobbing, constantly choking, and his body was convulsing violently. It's not only Auntie Yang who has been looking forward to this scene for countless times in her heart, but also he is. Every moment, he is waiting for this scene to appear, hoping to see that the old companion can be down to earth, can walk with his legs as before. He is not afraid of tiredness, nor is he afraid of hardship, nor is he afraid of getting old. He is just afraid. From now on, he will never hold hands with his wife, and they will walk shoulder to shoulder, relying on each other and helping each other. But before Yi Tian appeared, he felt that he had lost any possibility of getting this feeling again. But Yi Tian's appearance, let him see the possibility again, let him mind everything, has been realized. Take a step, try to take a step. After wiping away the tears from the corner of his eyes, Yang Bo looked at Aunt Yang and said in a trembling voice. Although Aunt Yang has already stood up, he is very worried that Aunt Yang, who hasn't acted for a long time, will be unable to walk because her body doesn't adapt to this feeling. Aunt Yang raised her hand, wiped the corners of her eyes, and then tried to take a step forward carefully. This step was very small, but she walked very steadily. Even though she had been paralyzed in bed for so long, her legs' muscles still didn't forget the instinct of walking, and she didn't have any discomfort. That kind of feeling even let her feel as if in the past paralyzed in bed, just a dream. But she didn't know that all this was so smooth, not because of others, but because Yi Tian was using mana to nourish her legs and strengthen the vitality of her legs. With enough blood and vitality, her legs and feet will not lose the instinct of walking, and she will be able to walk smoothly. It's a success. It's a real success. My dear friend, you can finally stand up. Yang Bo's lips are moving, and his tears are falling down on the ground along his gullied face. He reaches out his hands and hugs Aunt Yang in his arms, sobbing. Not only Yang Bo, but also Aunt Yang could not say a word at this moment. Only her lips were moving and tears were dripping. Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer look at this scene, their eyes are already red, and their crystal clear tears revolve in their eyes. From these two old people, they understand what it means to help each other, what it means to share weal and woe, and what it means that love is stronger than gold. Only in this way can the feelings that have been tested last forever. But they also understand that no one in the world is willing to accept such a test. Moreover, without the appearance of Yi Tian, all these things will be faced with, I'm afraid they will all be the result of incomparable collapse. My eyes are so sour. Should I be a good man instead of a villain? Even Han Xiaofeng, a heartless guy, can't help rubbing his eyes at the moment when he sees this behind the scenes. He feels that the corners of his eyes are sour. This scene left Yi Tian slightly surprised. It seems that Han Xiaofeng, though a little young, is not completely hopeless. At least, he still retains some human nature. Thank you, Xiao Tian. At this time, Yang Bo and Aunt Yang released their tightly hugged bodies, then looked at Yi Tian and bowed to him deeply. The old couple knew that without Yi Tian's help, waiting for them would still be endless suffering. Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, please don't do this. This is what I should do. At the beginning, my grandfather promised to help you to provide for the aged. It was the Mu family who didn't take good care of you. Now I'm just doing things for my grandfather that he didn't finish. Hearing the news, Yi Tian quickly mixed up the two old people and followed them closely. He looked at the tearful and excited Yang Bo and said with a smile, however, we have to keep our word when we bet. When we get off the plane, Yang Bo will help me make a sugar gourd. If it's not for the taste I ate when I was a child, it won't work. Well, I'll do it well. Yang Bo was in tears, nodding and wiping his tears. Yi Tian smiles and takes the two old people back to their seats to calm them down. The old people are old, especially the two of them are not very good physique. If the mood fluctuation is big, it is not a good thing. Brother Yi, this is the villa I'm talking about. More than half an hour later, the helicopter circled down and finally landed on the apron of a villa adjacent to Shanghai. Although there is a word hai in the name of Shanghai, in fact, it's just a name for lakes in old Beijing. Shanghai has been the core of Yinjing since several centuries ago, with beautiful scenery. In particular, Han Xiaofeng's villa, with a cost of 1 billion yuan and a capital of 1 billion yuan, has excellent scenery. After walking down the apron, you can see all the scenery of China Sea. The cool breeze blows, the blue water ripples, and the willows sway slightly with the wind. It has a unique artistic conception. Not only that, the whole villa is built in Chinese style. In the large courtyard, there are flower beds, rockeries and fish ponds, which are very suitable for the elderly. This high configuration, even in the capital, is absolutely one of the top luxury houses. Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, you two will live here in the future. If you have any needs in life, please tell me of course. If you are not satisfied with this place, please tell me that I will help you to live in another place. Yi Tian looked around and nodded with satisfaction. Then he looked at Yang Bo and Aunt Yang and said with a smile. Satisfied, satisfied. Yang Bo and Aunt Yang nodded in a hurry. Although Yi Tian's grandfather was alive in the past, the Mu family could barely be regarded as a family in the capital, but even so, they could not live in such a noble place. As for the two of them, it was unexpected that they could provide for the aged in such a place in their lifetime. Just be satisfied. I'll stay in the capital for a while, but I won't come here often in the future. Basically, this is your old residence. Yi Tian smiles and nods, then says. Brother Yi, don't worry. I often come to see Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang when I have nothing to do. I'll take care of the things in my life. I'll take care of someone who loves me very much. Han Xiaofeng heard this, quickly stride forward, looking at Yi Tian, respectful smile, attitude is very respectful. I have a heart. Yi Tian hears the sound and looks at Han Xiaofeng, nodding slightly. It should be. Han Xiaofeng waved his hand in a hurry, but his face was smiling. Yi Tian attaches so much importance to Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang. If he takes good care of the two old people, can Yi Tian forget him? Yang Bo and Aunt Yang looked at Han Xiaofeng's humble appearance and looked at each other. They sighed and sighed. If only Master Mu were still alive, if only Yi Tian's parents were still alive, and they could see this scene and see Yi Tian's promising future now. Ding ling ling. But at this time, Yi Tian's mobile phone suddenly rings, showing a strange phone number. After Yi Tian gets through the phone, but strangely, there is no word, just pause a little, then hang up the phone. Although Yi Tian is a little curious, he doesn't take it to heart. After all, there are a lot of such harassing calls nowadays. Maybe it's someone else who cheated you to call back deliberately. Uncle Yang and Aunt Yang, you two will live here and have a good life. I have a little money in this card. Although it's not much, you should take it first. If it's not enough, you can tell me later that the password is my birthday. When I'm in the capital, I'll often come to see you. After putting down the mobile phone, Yi Tian takes out a bank card from his pocket and hands it to Yang Bo and Aunt Yang. Although Yang Bo is determined not to accept, he is still stuck in his hand by Yi Tian. Naturally, the two old people were full of tears and sighs. Even the two of them did not expect that a child who had taken care of them only a few times in the past would take on the responsibility of providing for them. After a turn in the villa, Yi Tian intended to let Yang Bo and Aunt Yang live in the master bedroom on the second floor as a family. But Yang Bo and Aunt Yang insisted on staying in the guest room on the first floor and the master bedroom on the second floor, waiting for Yi Tian to come back. Yang Bo and Aunt Yang know very well that Yi Tian is willing to take care of their two old people, give them a place to live, and give them living expenses. Although they have the relationship of helping his grandfather fulfill his promise, it is more because Yi Tian is kind-hearted. After all, as a grandson, Yi Tian would not be blamed for not helping Mr. Mu fulfill his promise. Yi Tian is kind-hearted and willing to help them, but if they really accept Yi Tian's good intentions, or even live in the master bedroom on the second floor without any scruples, that is to say, they are not sensible. Yi Tian advised a few words, but saw two old people's attitude is firm, and if Yang Bo even Yi Tian insisted that they sleep in the master bedroom again, they would move into the servant room at the back of the kitchen to live, so he said, Yi Tian can only give up and let it go. However, the villa has a large area. Even the guest rooms on the first floor are excellent in light and facilities. And although there are stairs and elevators in the villa, it's also a good thing that the two old people are old after all and live on the first floor to avoid climbing up and down. After everything is arranged properly, Han Xiaofeng finds someone to send red fruit and rock sugar. Yang Bo takes out his 18 skills and helps Yi Tian string a few more strings of ice sugar gourds. Although time goes by, the red sweet and sour taste wrapped under the rock sugar remains unchanged. That kind of familiar taste, let Yi Tian feel, as if it is back to the old days. After eating the ice sugar gourd, Yi Tian accompanied Yang Bo and Aunt Yang to talk for a while and then left. The two old men helped each other and sent them to the intersection. Then they turned back with tears in their eyes. They have worked hard for most of their lives. Until now they meet Yi Tian, their lives are really changed. Ding ling ling. At this time, as soon as he got on the bus, Yi Tian's mobile phone rang again. Yi Tian glanced at it and immediately saw that it was the number that had just called, but there was no sound there. Harassing phone calls, but also repeated calls? What's more, the mobile phone didn't indicate that it was a harassment call? Yi Tian frowned, picked up the phone, put it in his ear. This time, there is still no voice on the other side of the phone. To be exact, there is no voice to speak. With Yi Tianxiang's great ear power, he can hear the voice of breathing on the other side of the phone. According to the frequency, it seems that he is still a woman. Su Qing? After confirming this, Yi Tian immediately has a general guess about the identity of the person on the other side of the phone, and inquires tentatively. But almost at the same time as his words fell, the person opposite the phone hung up. This call is from Su Qing. When Yi Tian hears the hang-up call coming from the phone, he immediately becomes more and more sure that Su Qing is the one who has just called himself continuously and then said nothing. However, Su Qing has now followed Yun Feifei and Mu Qingqing to Shuyuzan to practice. She has become a mountain person. She is eager for revenge. Now she should be busy practicing. How can she suddenly call herself? What's more, it's still such a strange call without saying a word. If you're in any trouble, let me know. Don't hide. But a moment later, Yi Tian shook his head, picked up his mobile phone, and sent a text message to Su Qing's number. After waiting a little, he saw that there was neither a phone nor a text message to respond to, so he put these thoughts behind him. It's hard to guess the girl's mind, especially between him and Su Qing. There is a deep blood feud between the two people, but it's all caused by Taemin. He once liked Su Qing, but Su Qing didn't like him at that time. Later, after they lived under the same roof, Su Qing liked him, but he didn't have Su Qing in his heart. This error makes the relationship between them extremely complicated. But there is no doubt that the same roof and similar identity made him feel pity for Su Qing. He didn't want any more tragic things to happen to Su Qing. Yi Tian, what happened to Su Qing? What happened to her? Yan Bing sees this, looking at Yi Tian, inquisitive inquiry asks away, eyes twinkle. Not only Yan Bing, but also Xiao Yuer's eyes are full of exploration. Both of them know Su Qing's existence, and they also know that Yi Tian and Su Qing once had an engagement and had complicated grudges. However, since the mirage, Yan Bing has never heard of Su Qing again. Now, seeing Yi Tian mentioning Su Qing again, she can't help but be curious, thinking that they still have contact in private. I just called twice, but I didn't say a word. When I mentioned her name, the phone hung up. I suspect she called. Yi Tian didn't hide anything and replied calmly. Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer look at each other and immediately confirm the identity of the person on the other side of the phone. I'm afraid it's really Su Qing. As for why Su Qing called but didn't say a word, I'm afraid the reason is that in the bottom of Su Qing's heart, there are still feelings for Yi Tian, but there are too many disputes between them. She wants to hear Yi Tian's voice, but she doesn't know what to say. Moreover, Su Qing must also know that Yi Tian has no place in her heart. All this, let them two people, can't help but give birth to a kind of and Su Qing sympathize with each other. Ding ling ling. At this time, Yan Bing's mobile phone suddenly rang. The sudden bell broke the silence. Yan Bing answered the phone and said a few words. Then she turned to look at Yi Tian and said, "Our business trip to the capital has come. An exchange group from abroad has arrived at Yanhua University and plans to have a small meeting this evening. Is it a duel?" Yi Tian smell speech, pick eyebrow a smile, light way. Brain competition is not only at home, but also at home and abroad. Yanhua University wants to find some top students in brain competition and exercise them through the exchanges among various schools. How can these overseas students not be like this? In addition, apart from the competition, they also intend to explore the strength of the members of the Chinese brain competition before the real brain competition, so as to have a grasp of the outcome of the competition. Yes, that's what President Xi said. Yan Bing nodded, and then said, and listen to him, the students of these exchange groups seem to be the top 10 students in the field of brainpower competition. These people should not be underestimated. President Xi asked us to be careful. If they come to us, we shouldn't worry about it. When Yi Tian heard the speech, he picked up his eyebrows and said lightly, what we should worry about is the talent of these overseas exchange groups. Domineering. When Yan Bing and Xiao Yuer heard this, they could not help looking at each other. From each other's eyes, they all saw a strong color of worship. What is self-confidence? Yi Tian's performance at this moment is self-confidence. Let you southeast-northwest wind, I am still, dare to provoke me, then the last regret, it must be you. They understand that part of the reason why they like Yi Tian is his temperament. A moment later, the group arrived at Yanhua University. The people of the overseas exchange group are now under the office building. They are not good at coming here. As soon as they come up, they say they want to have a fight. Now Xiao Fei has taken them there. As soon as Yi Tiangang got off the bus, several students from Yanda, who had been guarding at the gate of the school, gathered around and looked at Yi Tian, excited. There is indeed a contradiction between Yi Tian and Yanda, but this contradiction is very simple, it is an internal contradiction. Now the overseas exchange group is here. In an old Chinese saying, brothers are fighting against the wall. Let's go and have a look. Yi Tian nodded, and then motioned to the students to lead the way and take him to the office building of Yanda. How about the strength of these overseas exchange group members? Walking on the road, Xiao Yuer inquired to the Yin University students. I don't know how strong it is, but it's very impressive, especially for some bloated guys in it. Even President Xi speaks with a gun in his hand. It seems that he doesn't like us very much, and he whistles when he sees beautiful girls. If President Xi is not good-natured, we all want to beat them up. I don't know where these grandchildren were beaten before, but it's certainly not a good thing. It's a pity that they were beaten too lightly. They should be harder and make a paraplegia. As soon as those Yin University students heard this, they were angry and resentful to Xiao Yuer. Looking at their exasperated appearance, it can be seen that these guys from the overseas exchange group have indeed committed public anger. The members of the overseas exchange group were beaten? Yan Bing inquires these Yin University students when he hears the news. Well, it seems that I've been beaten badly. I don't know if I've lost a few teeth. I don't know what I've done. I've been beaten like a bird, but it's really good. Unfortunately, I didn't see them beating with my own eyes. Those a few Yin University son listen to this words, immediately the eyebrow flies to dance, smile of to Yin Bing Wei. My nose is blue and my face is swollen, and my teeth seem to have been knocked out. How does it sound so familiar? Yen Bing listened to this words, involuntarily turned a head to Leaf Sky looked past. It shouldn't be so coincidental. Yi Tian raised his hand and touched his nose. He was also a little surprised. Then he shook his head with a smile. Listening to their conversation, those Yin University students were perplexed, but they tasted it vaguely. It seemed that the beating of those overseas exchange students had something to do with Yi Tian. To be exact, Yi Tian had beaten a group of foreigners. A little later, a group of people went to the downstairs of the office building. You Chinese are too timid to take part in such a small challenge. It seems that you are really used to being a weak nation. Before he reached the square under the office building, Yi Tian heard an exaggerated but stiff Chinese voice coming from the crowd. Damn it, dead trash. I don't deserve to be beaten. I really want to bring over the guys who beat them before and give them a good beating. The Yin University students immediately felt uncomfortable, gritted their teeth and clenched their fists. This sounds really familiar. Is it really the foreign garbage of last night? If that's the case, there are some predestination between this group of garbage and themselves. I'm in a hurry. I hope he will abuse these rubbish twice. Yi Tian hears this voice, immediately realizes that this voice sounds very familiar, not only him, but also Yan Bing's face shows the same look. It's not lack of courage, but prudence. We Huaxia are different from you. You always like to talk about the so-called freedom and human power, but you always forget that only when people have life can they have the greatest freedom and power. Without life, nothing is. At this time, Shi Chuanxing's retort sounded, word by word. After giving the answer, he said, if you want to carry out the test of falling objects here, I can agree, but I still said that, we must take safety measures, whether it is your people or our people. After saying so much, it's just 2 words, fear of death. Haha, these Chinese people are like this. They are as timid as mice. They are afraid of everything. Before, a small virus was so strong that it was lost that many people wore masks on their faces, and people in a city didn't go out. It was stupid and obedient. These Chinese people have no spirit of adventure. They are afraid of death and injury. They are really boring. It's a pity that these overseas exchange group members don't take Qi Chuanxing's words seriously at all. Instead, they sneer at them. Yi Tian listens to these words, sneer not to die, on the face is full of the color of disapproval. He knows that what Qi Chuanxing said is a wise saying. Freedom and courage are all based on the survival of human beings. However, if a person knows that it is dangerous to do something, he does not choose the best and safest way, but chooses the most dangerous and safest way. What kind of freedom is this kind of behavior? It's just looking for death. Even if it's death, it's not death with courage, but death with stupidity. The most ridiculous thing about these confused foreigners is that they are stupid by themselves, but they hope that people all over the world are as stupid as them. In a word, even Qi Chunsheng, who has excellent self-cultivation, is a little angry at the moment. Looking at these overseas exchange students, his face is not happy. You are not afraid to compete with us, are you? You are afraid of losing the game. I heard that places like you, if you lose a game, will be sent to dig coal in the ditch or be killed directly. Right? But without waiting for Qi Chunsheng to speak, the foreigner who had been leading the way in teasing Korean yen had begun to throw a very biased question to Qi Chunsheng. Damn, what does this foreigner mean? Who do you think we are? What's more, President Qi's words are wrong. When did you lose the courage to love your students and cherish your life? Do you know that you are in danger and that you will lose your life, but you don't choose the best and safest way, and the most difficult one is courage? On hearing this, the students of Yanda were immediately enraged. They blushed and their necks were thick. They yelled angrily. I don't know where you got this ridiculous conclusion, but what I can tell you is that these things don't exist, and I don't agree with the competition because I don't have courage, but as a teacher, I have the responsibility to protect the safety of my students. Qi Chunsheng's face turned white with anger. He raised his hand and let the students calm down. Then he said in a deep voice. You said so much, still can't prove you are a brave person. The foreigner shrugged his shoulders when he heard the speech. The sarcasm in his tone didn't diminish. Qi Chunsheng's face was about to turn to the bottom of the pot. At this moment, he has thoroughly seen that this overseas exchange group is clearly to pick things up. Principal Qi, since people want to play so much, let's play with them. Tian smiles, then looks around and says, don't be idle, big guys. Pick up your mobile phone, press the video button and record what these people say. Then, some students from Foreign Language Department will explain the exemption statement to them clearly. Then, some students from Law Department will come and draw up an exemption statement for them. Don't they just want to play? Let's play with them. It's you. Tian's words fell down. The foreigners, who were related and with a superior expression, immediately widened their eyes and made a sound of panic. Especially the wounded guys on their faces, they could not help but take a step back, full of panic. Even if it is to kill them, it is really unexpected that they will see this man who is as terrible as the devil in Yenhua University. It's really your garbage. It seems that I picked you up lightly that night so that you can stand here and talk. Tian light swept them one eye, intonation calm way. Boom! Tian's words fell down, and the sound of noise rose up in the sky. When they saw these overseas exchange students, they were curious about what happened to the injuries on their faces. In particular, the guys who talked so much made people feel like they were beaten out of their teeth. But they thought it was just their own guess, but who would have thought that they were really beaten like this? And the people who beat them are not others, but Tian. It's amazing, of course, it's too cathartic. When those overseas exchange students heard Tian's words, their faces became gloomy and gnashed their teeth. That night, they got a hard beating. In the heart is already hate. Tian really didn't expect, here, will enemy meet. Don't talk so much nonsense. Don't you want to compete? Let's compete. Tian raised his eyebrows and interrupted them. Then he said to Qi Chunsheng, Headmaster Qi, what project do they want to compete with? I'll compare with them. If it's dangerous, let the students spread out. They want to carry out the challenge of falling objects from high altitude. The proposed scheme is as follows. Prepare several balloons filled with water, drop them randomly from a certain floor according to the floor height of the office building, and then the contestants close their eyes and judge the height of the airflow falling only by the sound of landing. Of course, this is the first round of challenge. If it is further advanced, there will be 2 balloons falling from different heights at the same time. The player needs to judge the 2 falling heights according to the sound of the 2 air currents landing. Hearing this, Qi Chunsheng immediately looks at Tian and talks about the exchange projects proposed by these overseas exchange students. So it is. Hearing this, Tian nods a little and understands what Qi Chunqing is worried about. A balloon filled with water sounds like nothing dangerous, but in fact, falling objects are very dangerous. Under the influence of gravity acceleration, an egg is thrown down from the 25th floor. Once it hits a person's head, it will directly cause death. A balloon full of water is much bigger than an egg, and the height of the office building is far more than 25 floors. If there is an accident, it will be an irreparable loss. President Qi's refusal is obviously a kind of love and responsibility for students. This kind of behavior can be described by these foreigners as timidity and lack of courage, which shows how good they are at misinterpreting other people's thoughts and thoughts. A few balloons full of water are nothing at all. If we stand far away, there will be no accident. If we have no courage, we have no courage. Why do we have to find so many excuses? A foreigner who had been beaten out of his front teeth by Tian looked at Tian and sneered twice, saying, "You have a lot of courage. Do you dare to play with us?" "Of course I don't care, but I'm worried." "In your case, what should I do if there is a danger?" At that time, if you say that we Chinese don't care about safety and don't take any safety measures, what should we do? Tian shrugs at will, looking at these overseas exchange students, light way. Haha, you can rest assured that we will never say such words. If there is an accident, you will be exempted from all responsibilities. The foreigner was picked up by Tian yesterday, and now he is trying to find face. As soon as he hears this, he says in a loud voice. The rest of the foreigners also looked at Tian with a proud face, raised their head and straightened their chest, as if they wanted to show their manliness. "Principal Qi, we are guests from afar. Since the guests want to make such an attempt and exchange, why refuse them? In my opinion, it's better to fulfill their wishes and have a competition according to what they said. However, in order to be on the safe side, we need to sign an exemption agreement first. To make it clear in both Chinese and English, it is you who, under our firm dissuasion, still propose to carry out this consultation. Therefore, no matter what happens, it has nothing to do with us." The whole process was recorded and explained in Chinese and English. Tian looks at them with a faint smile and turns to look at Qi Chunqing. When he talks, he even stares at Qi Chunqing. Well, it should be done according to what Tian said. Law school students should draft 2 exemption agreements in both Chinese and English, and then the 2 parties should sign their own names, press their fingerprints, and take videos throughout the whole process to ensure that no one forces them to sign. When Qi Chunqing heard Tian's words, especially when he saw his eyes, he immediately realized that Tian wanted to give some color to the group of foreigners. After a little hesitation, he nodded, and then began to order the students to arrange according to what Tian said. And when arranging these, he couldn't help admiring Tian. It has to be said that Tian's arrangement is indeed very careful. He not only agreed to discuss with these overseas exchange students, but also avoided the possibility of these overseas exchange students wrangling in case of any accident by means of video and exemption agreement. After all, with the exemption agreement in both Chinese and English, and the video recording, in case of an accident, these foreigners will have nothing to say. What makes Qi Chunqing feel strange is that listening to the meaning of Tian's words makes people feel that he is determined that these overseas exchange students will have an accident. Besides that, we want to make a bet with you. If we win, you have to apologize for what happened yesterday. We want you to kneel down and say it yourself. You Chinese are inferior to us in intelligence and courage, of course. If you don't want to do that, you can let the one last night. At this time, the overseas exchange student who lost his front teeth, looked at Tian with a cheap smile, word by word. Not only that, he is going to speak Korean Yan's identity directly. As you wish, I can promise you a bet. But I can also tell you clearly, you are sure to lose. Moreover, I also have a condition that if you lose, you should kneel down in front of me and admit that you are not as smart as the Chinese. Of course, if you want to deny it or refuse to admit it, you can recall what happened last night and then make a decision. But don't wait for them to finish saying, "Leaf day," then it will yang hand, light way. What happened last night, although Korean Yan did nothing wrong, but after all, it was about a girl's reputation. He didn't want these rubbish to mention Korean Yan. Okay, it's a deal. After hearing this, the overseas exchange students looked at each other and sneered. These guys are really confident. Tian looks at their appearance, the vision can't help but slightly changed. But in a flash, he regained his composure. These guys, trying to make him lose, it's just a dream. Of course, there is also a prerequisite for the smooth progress of this bet, that is, these rubbish really have to compete with each other. After all, this group of people are so mean, and they are begging for a dangerous match to let everyone witness their courage. If Tian didn't give them a chance to witness their courage, wouldn't he be too sorry for these scum? A group of students from Yenhua University were very fast. Soon after, they took over the written exemption agreement and showed it in front of the camera with Tian's signal, making all the terms clear. Ha ha ha, the timid Chinese have no adventurous spirit at all. It's just an exemption agreement. What is it? Let's sign it. After several overseas exchange students got the exemption agreement, they read it again, then laughed and immediately wrote down their names on the paper. The students in charge of signing didn't pay any attention to them. After they signed their names, they showed the signatures of these overseas exchange students in front of the camera, indicating that they signed the agreement voluntarily without being coerced by anyone. After the shooting, the Yen University students were ready to put away the exemption agreement. But at this time, the overseas exchange student who was knocked out of his front teeth by Tian suddenly whispered to several other people, and then they all laughed playfully. Seeing the expression on their faces, Tian could not help frowning slightly. He turned his head to look at the Yen University students and said, "Take the agreement to me." Yen University son although don't quite understand what Tian's words mean, but still according to the words of the exemption agreement to Tian. Tian took the agreement and glanced at it. His eyes immediately fell on the signature of the student named Philip, and his eyes showed a cold color. What do you mean by this signature? Next, Tian looks up at Philip and asks coldly. I don't know what you're talking about. Philip shrugged his shoulders with indifference, with a look of how you make such a fuss. Tian, what's the matter? Seeing this, Shi Chunqing looks at Tian in a hurry and asks in a deep voice. President Qi, take a look at this. When Tian heard the words, he pointed to Philip's signature on the agreement. Hearing this, Shi Chunqing immediately swept toward Philip's signature. His face immediately cooled down. He turned to look at Philip and said in a cold voice, Philip, what do you mean by your signature? Seeing Shi Chunqing's expression, all the students of Yenhua University could not help looking at the agreement. After glancing over, they immediately saw that Philip's signature on the agreement was very strange. It looked like a little man with a hat and braids kneeling on the ground. It was very strange. I know what this signature looks like. A few years ago, a foreign enterprise apologized for insulting China. Although they wrote a letter of apology at that time, they deliberately wrote the signature as a kneeling pigtail slave in order to disgust us. Yes, there is one thing I remember. This guy, obviously, deliberately wrote this to disgust us. Rubbish, Tian just knocked off their teeth before. It's really cheap. It's time to chop off his dog paws. When they saw the shape of the signature, those Yen University students were also immediately angry, gnashing their teeth, and their eyes were almost bursting with fire. I don't know what you're talking about. That's my signature habit. Of course, it may be that you people are too sensitive and always feel that someone is bullying you. Philip shrugged his shoulders with a smile, and his face was indifferent, as if all this was really an accident, not intentional. But the complacency in his eyes seemed to say that Lousy did it on purpose. What can you do to me? Sorry. Apologize to us immediately. You are insulting. Whose signature will be signed like this on purpose? Yenhua students out of anger, surrounded by Philip's body, watching him loud cold drink repeatedly, extremely unhappy. What are you doing? Bullying? What did I do wrong? I just signed a name. You Chinese are sensitive and think it's insulting. What's the relationship with me? Philip looked at these students without fear, shrugged and said. Hearing this, Shi Chunqing's face became livid and gritted his teeth, but he had nothing to do. After all, it's just a signature. Although Philip's action is obviously insulting the Chinese people, he can really use coincidence to prevaricate the past. No matter where he goes, he can't say too much about the past. Although a group of students in Yanhua University were so angry that their lungs were exploding, they also felt powerless. Headmaster Qi, don't waste time. Let's get ready to compete. But at this time, along the depth of the crowd, suddenly came the voice of Yi Tian indifferent. Yi Tian is not going to take care of Philip's insult to the Chinese? Hearing Yi Tian's words, the eyes of all the students in Yanhua University are involuntarily cast on Yi Tian, full of confusion and confusion. Yi Tian was the first person to find this strange thing, so he must be very clear about Philip's deliberate humiliation of the Chinese people. However, knowing the inside story, Yi Tian turned a blind eye to the matter and chose to open the contest. You are a reasonable person. You think too much about insults. I remember that you Huaxia have a saying that your heart is dirty, so everything you look at is dirty. Philip heard this also think Yi Tian is to give up investigation, smile. Qi Chunqing looked at Philip's fearless manner, 5 fingers pinched tightly, and his heart was full of anger. But he thought of Yi Tian's words and understood that there must be a reason for him to do so. He turned to look at him and asked, Yi Tian, are you sure you want to start the competition now? I'm sure. Yi Tian nodded and gave a definite answer. Then he turned his head and looked at Philip. He said with a light smile, since you've heard the old Chinese saying, I think you've heard it too. If you raise your head 3 feet, don't do anything bad, otherwise, you'll get what you want. I'm not afraid of retribution for not doing anything wrong. Philip shrugged his shoulders and laughed. His expression seemed to say, I did it on purpose. What can you do for me? It's up to me whether I do it or not. God knows, God knows. Yi Tian smiles indifferently, then turns his head to look at Qi Chunqing and says faintly, President Qi, let's start. Remember the whole inheritance video. Good. Although Qi Chunqing didn't understand why Yi Tian was so determined, he knew that there must be a reason for his determination. He immediately nodded solemnly. And you, too, send 2 men to join the men who throw balloons full of water from upstairs. Immediately after, Yi Tian looks at Philip and other overseas exchange students, light way. After a word, the overseas exchange students looked at each other and went to the crowd throwing water polo. After careful examination, they nodded to Philip and others. Get me a helmet and a raincoat. Seeing this, Yi Tian turns his head and looks at Qi Chunqing. It's ready. Qi Chunqing nodded and asked the students to take their raincoats and helmets. After Yi Tian dressed up, he turned to look at Philip and other overseas exchange students and said faintly, Do you need these things? We can provide them for you. Ha ha, it's just a water polo. You're scared. We're so far away. How can it fall on us? I'm as timid as a mouse. Philip looked at Yi Tian's ready appearance and laughed with exaggerated expression. Since you don't need it, forget it. Take it. Yi Tian didn't say anything to Philip. After nodding faintly, he nodded to the students who were throwing water polo. Soon, several overseas exchange students and Yan University students took the elevator to their respective floors. Ready to start, all students closed their eyes. The floor is 3 meters high. According to the sound you hear, you can infer the height. The error should be within 1 meter. If you exceed it, you will lose. Seeing this, Qi Chunqing glances back and signals Yi Tian and others to close their eyes. Then he says the rules in a deep voice. Yi Tian and others nodded and immediately closed their eyes. After checking carefully, Qi Chunqing nodded to the people upstairs. Shua. Seeing Qi Chunqing's sign, the first overseas exchange student who was in charge of throwing water polo immediately threw the water polo from the height of the 18th floor. The water ball is thrown out, and under the blessing of gravity, it roars from the 15th floor towards the ground heavily. But almost at the moment when the water polo is about to land, along the void, suddenly there is an invisible wind blowing, gently pushing the water polo out. Dong! Pop! The next second, the falling water ball suddenly fell on Philip's head. In a flash, Philip fell to the ground. Along his head, the water in the balloon was mixed with blood and immediately spilled all over the ground. Is it true that people are cheap and have their own way? This strange scene directly made all the people in the room dumbfounded, especially the Yanhua students. On each face, there was an incredible look, and in his mind, Yi Tian's previous sentence that people are cheap, but heaven has its own way. However, they really don't understand where the evil wind just came from, and the strength of the evil wind is so heavy that it can blow the balloon full of water askew, and fortunately it happened to blow to Philip's head. Is it true that China is not only a land of outstanding people, but also a god of extraordinary efficiency, and I really can't stand Philip's reckless behavior? Philip. The overseas exchange students are also completely confused. They look at Philip, who has fallen into a pool of blood. They are full of consternation and fear. After a long time, they come back to Philip and rush to him. They are at a loss and don't know what to say. It's not their cowardice, it's Philip's situation. It's really frightening. After the water ball fell down, Philip was smashed head and blood. After the blood dispersed, and the water in the balloon spilled, the two mixed together, blood and water mixed together, immediately spilled all over the ground. It seemed that the whole person was like falling in a pool of blood, especially ferocious. Cool. It's really retribution. Let the grandson pretend to be innocent again, just like a white lotus. Haha, it's not intentional. If it's not intentional, will it suffer such retribution? In my opinion, the goods deserve it. Garbage, you deserve to suffer such a crime. Insult us Chinese, that is to find your own death. After a short period of consternation, all the students in Yanhua University were very happy. This matter, how so coincident? Shi Chuanxing's expression is also dull. He never believes in the so-called ghosts and gods. He thinks that the so-called ghosts and gods are just the people's random speculation on the nameless things. But at this moment, this strange scene, it is to make him have a kind of cognition such as the feeling of being subverted. Suddenly, his eyes suddenly fell on Yi Tian's body. Before, when Philip was aggressive and attracted the public's anger, Yi Tian urged him to start the competition, and even said that if a person is cheap, he will receive it from heaven. Moreover, from the beginning, Yi Tian was there to make a disclaimer, and he did it very carefully. After all these things are combined, people can't help doubting that this matter has an inseparable relationship with Yi Tian. Yi Tian perceives Shi Chuanxing's eyes, turns his head, smiles towards calmness, and nods slightly. It must be him. It must be him. When he saw Yi Tian's expression, Shi Chuanxing immediately determined that the person who led to all this was either someone else or Yi Tian. He really doesn't understand, how can Yi Tian have such great ability, can make such amazing things? Moreover, he carefully recalled that just at the beginning of the competition, after everyone closed their eyes, Yi Tian did not do any action. No, to be exact, it seemed that his hand was moved gently and unknown, but with such a slight move, how did he affect the height of the 15th floor? This is too outrageous, too incredible, right? However, how can he think of it? Yi Tian's understatement is to strike a wind blade into the void. His grasp of magic power is almost superb. When the wind blade and the balloon filled with water touch, the air will push the balloon over Philip's head. So, all these actions, it seems, are no different from an accident. It's you people. You think Philip is insulting you, so you deliberately hurt him. At this time, the overseas exchange students also woke up one by one, but they didn't respond to the call to Philip. While dialing the emergency call, they pointed to Shi Chuanxing and Yi Tian, gnashing their teeth and roaring furiously, as if they were trying to tear off their flesh. I warn you, don't talk nonsense about things without evidence, otherwise, I will sue you for slander. Yi Tian sneers and moves what Philip said before to those overseas exchange students. You. Overseas exchange students are furious, blushing and neck-thick, clenching their fists. They want to rush up and give Yi Tian a full hand. Why, do you still want to fight? Yi Tian see this scene, ponder a smile, light way. A word fell, those foreigners immediately silent down, originally tightly clenched fist, powerless spread out. Not long ago, they had made a hand with Yi Tian. It was very clear how terrible this man was. To fight with him is pure self-humiliation. No, it's self-pain. How do you Chinese do things? Throw a balloon full of water and it can hit people's heads. I think you people do it on purpose. You Chinese side should take full responsibility for this accident. Think of here, those overseas exchange students immediately changed the target of attack, turned to look at Qi Chunsheng, cold threat. Let your mother fart. What do you mean? It's our intention. It's your own people who threw balloons full of water from upstairs. My videos here are very clear. Our school also has high-definition cameras. You can read them freely. Who knows if you people have personal feuds, so you deliberately take this opportunity to retaliate. In my opinion, the grandson's teeth have all been knocked out. At first sight, he has done many immoral things. I see, maybe it's not revenge, or it was intended to perform a play and slander us, but the play was smashed and suffered for itself. The overseas exchange students heard the news and looked upstairs. As far as they could see, one of their companions was looking at them in panic. That blonde look, and Chinese people, is really out of place, how can not deny? We sympathize with you, but it was an accident, and it was caused by you. We have no responsibility. Qi Chunsheng is full of confidence at the moment. He looks up at those overseas exchange students and says faintly, "What is no responsibility? What happened here in your school has nothing to do with you." As soon as the overseas exchange students heard this, they were immediately worried. Looking at Qi Chunsheng, they yelled angrily, "Let's take charge?" You open your eyes and see clearly. There is a disclaimer agreement signed by you. There is also a video. No one coerces you. Yes. There is an exemption agreement, and what I photographed just now is very clear. After Tian took his helmet and raincoat, he asked you whether you should wear them. It's just you who refused. The exemption agreement was signed by you, the safety helmet and raincoat were rejected by you, and the people were smashed by you. Everything was decided by you. Now you plan to let us be responsible. What a big face you are. Yanhua University students sneer again and again, refuted in a deep voice. As soon as the words fell, the group of overseas exchange students immediately had some silly eyes and opened their mouths, but they didn't know what to say for a moment. All of a sudden, they found that all of these things were against them. All the mistakes are made by themselves. What's more, it's like they've been wrong from the beginning. How could that be? How can things happen so coincidentally? Several overseas exchange students were speechless and looked at each other. There was a strong fear in each other's eyes. At this moment, they felt that, in the dark, it was like an invisible black hand, who was controlling their fate and creating all the bad luck. But they couldn't find any clues, as if all this was a coincidence made by fate. I don't care. This is what happened in Huaxia. This is what happened in Yanhua University. It's up to you. And even if you are not in charge, you have to call an ambulance. How can you be so cold-blooded that people don't care? After several overseas exchange students look at each other, their eyes meet, looking at Yi Tian and Qi Chunsheng, word by word, loudly. Responsible? I'm sorry, the exemption agreement is signed by you people. It's written clearly in black and white. No matter what accident happens, it has nothing to do with us. We sympathize with your people in such a situation, but we are also helpless. Qi Chunsheng couldn't get used to these overseas exchange students for a long time. Hearing what they said, he immediately took out the exemption agreement and said with a sneer, "Yes, we have signed an exemption agreement between us, and it is you who refused the safety measures. We do not agree. You are forced to continue the exchange of views, and the accident caused by your own people has nothing to do with us." Haha, you rubbish, don't think we don't know your abacus. We'll call an ambulance to come, then you're going to let us take charge. You don't care about your own lives. Why do you want us to care? If you don't know our Huaxia emergency telephone number, I'll tell you, you can call 120. Don't tell me, you don't even know these 3 Arabic numerals, do you? When a group of students at Yanhua University heard this, they immediately sneered and looked at a group of overseas exchange students. Just now, the words and deeds of these overseas exchange students have fully explained what kind of rubbish they are. For this kind of people, you don't have to mind that you are judging these people from the most dangerous position. Because their shameless degree will definitely refresh your cognition of exotic flowers and garbage again and again. I advise you to dial the emergency call as soon as possible, otherwise, his condition may not be very good and he may lose his life. And at this time, Tian looked at the group of overseas exchange students, Light Wei. Hearing this, they looked at Philip, who collapsed on the ground. As soon as they could see, the color of the blood on the ground had changed from light red after being diluted by the water in the balloon to strong bright red. Moreover, in the bright red blood, there are a lot of dark brown blood. The danger of this situation can be seen. Hiss. The group of overseas exchange students saw this scene, and their expression immediately changed. Especially the initiator who just dropped the balloon filled with water and ran down from the upstairs, his face turned pale in a flash. The beanie sweat dropped to the ground along his forehead, his legs trembled wildly, and there were more fishy wet marks along the legs. At this moment, he was really afraid. He is still young and hasn't played enough, but he doesn't want to be in prison and bear such a charge. Moreover, all the evidence was so strong that he didn't even have a chance to defend himself. Help me, help me. Not only that, he is looking at several other companions, with a crying voice, to their cry repeatedly. Although it seems to be an accident that he just dropped the balloon, he still insisted on dropping the water polo when he knew that his companion had not done any protection. If strictly speaking, I'm afraid that a charge of unintentional wounding can't escape. If Philip had any more accidents and lost his life, he would have to be charged with manslaughter. At that time, the crime would be great. Go! Go now. Several overseas exchange students looked at each other without any hesitation, immediately turned around and wanted to escape from the scene, leaving the mess to Yenhua University to deal with. What do you want to do? But just as they turned around, there was a faint voice in front of them. When they looked up, they saw that Tian was smiling and standing in front of them with a playful smile on his face. How did the devil get here? A group of overseas exchange students see Tian, immediately dumbfounded, can't believe looking back, make sure Tian is not in the position just standing. However, they really don't know. Tian just stood opposite them, but now, as soon as they turned around, Tian appeared in front of them again. This kind of speed, I'm afraid the track and field flying man can't do it? Is he a ghost? No, is he really a devil? Even, all the coincidences that just happened were made by the devil who controlled their destiny. Get out of the way. But at this moment, these overseas exchange students can no longer think about so much, but look at Tian and scold uneasily. Well, you hurt people, and you want to run away? You must be dreaming. Come on, stop them for me. Don't let the real murderers run away. Tian drinks angrily, full of righteous indignation. Pointing at these overseas exchange students, he shouts angrily. Then, Chao Yanbing and Xiao Yuer wink. As soon as a word fell, people immediately raised their mobile phones and began to shoot. Get out of here. Flash glare, the group of overseas exchange students were shaken heart fidgety, nothing to care about, toward Tian. Then suddenly a wave, want to push him away. Shwa! But at this time, an incredible scene appeared. When the overseas exchange student touched Tian's body, like a paperman, flew upside down. Even, Tian stayed in the air for nearly 3 seconds before he fell to the ground. But, strangely, the sound of landing was very slight, just like the leaves touching the ground. Ah! But it is such a slight landing. Tian is like a piece of terrible charcoal. Along his mouth, suddenly came out a burst of extremely miserable roar. This what's going on? This scene made the students of Yenhua University dumbfounded in an instant. They had seen Tian's fierce fighting power before. How could they be so vulnerable now in the hands of these foreigners and fly out at the touch? My hand, how can my strength be so strong? Shenhua said that the students of Yenhua University, even the overseas exchange students, were completely stupid at this moment, especially the guy pushing Tian, who raised his hands in disbelief. He could hardly believe that he had such great strength. Well, these overseas exchange students hurt themselves. In order to escape, they even dared to hurt our classmates. Fortunately, the evidence has been photographed by us. Let's go together and leave the rubbish behind. Call the police immediately. At this time, Yan Bing shook his arms and cried out in a loud voice. I'll go, acting school. Oscar, absolutely owe him a little gold man. Yan Bing's words fall down, and all the students of Yanhua University around him immediately understand the truth. They know that Yi Tian was not beaten to fly, but that he deliberately threw himself back when the foreigner's hands touched him, creating a terrible situation in which the other side was guilty of stealing and wanted to flee. They are standing up for Yi Tian's superb acting skills thumbs at the same time, but also one by one to make the same appearance of righteous indignation, indignant then toward the group of overseas exchange students rushed in the past. A group of overseas exchange students were shocked. They just wanted to speak, but they didn't say a word. They were drowned by the black crowd, and they were all trampled under their feet. They were followed by countless old fists and feet, just like raindrops, completely drowning them. Dealy after a long time, when the police car came and the flashing red and blue police lights were shining, I saw that the group of overseas exchange students who had been arrogant, at this moment, were all black and blue, and their heads were as swollen as pigs' heads. I'm afraid even if their mother came, they couldn't recognize who they were. President Qi, what's the matter? Although the police are used to seeing the world, they are still surprised to see this. Especially when they find that the beaten one is a foreigner, they are even more surprised. They quickly turn to look at the smiling Qi Chunqing in the crowd and ask in a deep voice. Police officers, you don't know that these overseas exchange students are so shameless and barbaric that they are bandits. As soon as Qi Chunqing heard the question, the smile on his face immediately disappeared. Instead, he was filled with indignation. He pointed to the group of overseas exchange students and said angrily. Several police officers looked at each other. Looking at the current situation, these overseas exchange students looked as if they had just been beaten by robbers. Moreover, seeing that Qi Chunqing was so happy just now, it didn't look like he was bullied. Officer, this is the video just now. You can see it after a look. Seeing this, Qi Chunqing winked at the students of Yanhua University. Immediately someone came over with a mobile phone and told the whole story. Police officer, that's what happened. They ignored the safety rules and forced the competition. We had to agree, but they didn't take safety measures. As a result, they were smashed by the things thrown down by their own people, but we were responsible for them. This classmate was so angry that he was beaten away by them. You see how hot these people are. Yan Bing also comes over and shows the video of Yi Tian being pushed by the overseas exchange student after the student finishes the whole story. Hiss. Seeing the picture of Yi Tian flying upside down and falling to the ground, these policemen immediately took a breath of air. Looking at the way people fly out, it's like being hit by a high-speed car. It's conceivable that these overseas exchange students use a lot of strength when they do it. It's tolerable to beat Chinese students in the land of China when you know you are wrong, but you don't admit it. Don't worry, we will get justice for that classmate. Several policemen were filled with indignation and anger. They all wanted to kick these overseas exchange students to vent their indignation. After looking at Yan Bing sincerely, they could not help but come forward and handcuff them with bright and cool stainless steel handcuffs. What are you doing? What did we do wrong? Why do you detain us? Are you blind? If you don't see that we are beaten, why do you want to catch us? We are foreigners and enjoy immunity. Let us go, you are Chinese police, we are foreigners, you have no right to arrest us, we have to complain. The handcuffs fell on their wrists. The foreigners who were beaten black and blue immediately became anxious and roared. They even moved out of their superior status and wanted the police to untie the handcuffs on their wrists. Why are you arrested? Let me make it clear to you one by one. First, you are suspected of negligent and serious wounding. Second, you are suspected of fighting, intentionally wounding, and have a tendency to escape. Every one of these things is not a small thing. It's natural to catch you. Also, you are foreigners. What's the matter? Don't forget, this is the land of China. You should abide by the laws of China in this land. If you break the law, no matter you are Chinese or foreigners, no matter you are dogs or pigs, we will catch you. The policeman heard the news, looked at the overseas exchange students, gave an indifferent smile, then pressed their heads and stuffed them into the police car. Classmate, how are you doing? Immediately after, a young police officer quickly walked to Yi Tian's side, with a sympathetic low call on his face, hoping that the pushed classmate would wake up. But he went on several times, but Yi Tian had no response at all. This scene filled the young policeman with righteous indignation and anger. He wished he could turn to the foreigner to help Yi Tian relieve his anger. Snoring. But at this time, his ear but suddenly heard a sound of sleep, vaguely snoring. And when he carefully distinguished, it is found that the purr is from Yi Tian's body. This guy, didn't he faint, but fell asleep? The young policeman couldn't help looking silly when he heard the news. Moreover, he carefully remembered that the track of Yi Tian being pushed away just now was quite incredible. However, according to the situation in the video, even if Yi Tian is acting, how can he step back and jump so far away? This kind of means, I'm afraid even the world champions have no way to do it. Thinking of this, the young policeman couldn't help raising his hand and wanted to touch Yi Tian's nose to see if he could wake him up. Thank you, officer. We will send this brave student to the hospital. At the same time, I will ask the hospital to issue a certificate of injury and submit it to the police. Seeing that something was not right, Shi Chunsheng hurried over and held the young policeman's hand tightly. He was very grateful. Well, it's up to you. Believe us and the law. We will punish these killers severely. Hearing this, the policeman didn't know what was going on. He immediately nodded, then turned around and walked back to the police car. Soon, police cars and ambulances drove away, and a group of overseas exchange students were either sent to the hospital or brought into the police station. Well, don't go to sleep. It's all gone. After waiting for the police to leave with the overseas students, Yan Bing looks at Yi with a bitter smile and shakes his head helplessly. Ha ha ha, you see through? However, I had a good sleep just now. When Yi Tian heard this, he immediately reached out to support the ground and stood up, moving his hands and feet, which was very easy and neat. What happened just now is that Yi Tian is acting. Powerful as he, how can he be pushed so far by a slap? See this scene, Yanhua University students immediately boiling, everyone admires looking at Yi Tian. Without Yi Tian's guidance and reminding them to sign the exemption agreement, record the video and prepare all the evidence properly, I'm afraid that the black pot of Yanhua University will be washed away. I don't know how many foreign media and journalists want to say that Yanhua University does not protect the personal safety of overseas exchange students. Yi Tian, Yi Tian. Immediately, among all the students around, I don't know who took the lead first. Immediately, the cries of excitement and worship, like tides, swept the whole Yanhua University. Even the small lake deep in the campus rippled with thousands of fine ripples. Immediately after that, a large group of excited students rushed to the front. They grabbed Yi Tian from the ground and threw him into the air. At this moment, they have completely forgotten that Yi Tian is a student of Nanhai University, and he once defeated the shame of Yanhua University twice, leaving only excitement and emotion. Yi Tian, with his own strength and personal charm, completely conquered these students of Yanhua University. Yan Bing looks at the scene with a smile. She sighs in her heart. It's funny and full of pride. This smelly boy has drawn people to his side. Shi Chunxing shook his head and chuckled, but immediately, he was excited and thought to himself, with Yi Tian's ability to deal with so many things before, and his current appeal, if this boy wants to turn around and dig the corner of Yanhua University, and if these students follow him, what can he do? In that case, would you rather steal the chicken than eat the rice, and lose your wife and lose your soldiers? Don't worry, as long as you don't dig Yi Tian, we won't give you the idea of Yanhua University. Yan Bing looks at the scene in front of her, and then looks at Shi Chunxing's nervous expression, smiling. Shi Chunxing took a breath and looked at Yi Tian greedily. He really didn't want to miss such a good student. With such a student, we can improve the popularity of the whole school by our own efforts. It's a deal. I won't dig Yi Tian anymore, but you should also promise not to dig our Yanhua University students. But a moment later, he shook his head with a bitter smile and made a decision. Looking at Yan Bing, he said in a deep voice. After experiencing so many things, he can see clearly that Yi Tian has no intention of joining Yanhua University at all. Moreover, he always feels that for Yi Tian, it seems that going to school is a dispensable thing for him. Whether it is Nanhai University or Yanhua University, he is like a passerby. His mind is not on these. Such a situation, in addition to Yi Tian, he has not seen in any other students. However, he also understands that with Yi Tian's ability, even if he does not study, he can still live a good life even if he withdraws from school. He is far more than these students who graduated from Yanhua University. Perhaps, in this world, there is a kind of person who was born to make others feel that no matter how you chase him, you can only see his back. Since he couldn't keep it, he didn't have to ask anymore. He was afraid that he would get nothing but sadness. Don't worry, we have a deal. Nanhai University will never use Yi Tian's hand to dig up the students of Yanhua University. Yan Bing looks at Qi Chunqing and smiles when she hears the words. When Qi Chunqing is relieved, she adds another sentence with a playful look. However, if you are a student of Yanhua University, you want to transfer to Nanhai University on your own initiative. You? Qi Chunqing was stunned when he heard the news, but he couldn't say a word. His whole life was almost dull, and his heart was full of convulsions. Unfortunately, he understood that what he had just said was not perfect. He could not blame anyone for lifting a stone and smashing himself in the foot. Fortunately, although Yi Tian is very strong, few students want to transfer from Yanhua University to Nanhai University. Mr. Yan, do you want to transfer to Nanhai University? We want to be classmates with Yi Tian. It should be great to have such a classmate. Yes, we want to go to Nanhai University. It's said that the scenery of Nanhai is very good and the climate is very good. We want to see such a place. But just at this time, several students have gathered in front of Yan Bing, their eyes shining, and asked her. Qi Chunqing saw that a mouthful of old blood almost didn't come out, and his heart was stabbed like a knife. What makes him even more flustered is that at this moment, the students who ask questions to Yan Bing are all the best in Yanhua University. They belong to the type of gifted students. In other words, the teachers in the school can hardly teach them anything, and they need to study by themselves. Such students, even in Yanhua University, are the real treasure. But now, this group of babies are attracted by Yi Tian's demeanor and move to Nanhai University to be classmates with Yi Tian. He couldn't imagine what a sensation it would cause if such a thing really happened. Moreover, I'm afraid that the instructors of these students and the headmaster are not going to tear the vice headmaster to pieces. The climate of Nanhai is very good. Nanhai University is also very beautiful, and there are many beautiful schoolgirls and schoolgirls. At this time, Yi Tian has got rid of the crowd. After hearing this, he looks at the students and says with a smile. Qi Chunqing almost burst into tears when he heard the speech. Especially when he saw that there were some more students who were about to be gifted and began to look forward to it, his heart was so painful that he couldn't extricate himself. However, he had no way to criticize Yi Tian. After all, Yi Tian did not dig these students, but told them about the scenery of Nanhai University. However, I don't suggest you transfer to Nanhai University when you are in a hot mood. Although I like Nanhai University very much, there is still a big gap between Nanhai University and Yanhua University, especially in the academic atmosphere, which can't be made up for. You will get a better education here. What's more, it's not a trivial matter to transfer. It must be the pride of your parents and family that you can get into Yanhua University. If you transfer to Nanhai University, what will your parents think and what will the people around you think? But at this time, Yi Tian looked at those students who were looking forward to smiling and said slowly. After a word, those students who had been looking forward to gradually calmed down and showed a thoughtful look on their faces. As Yi Tian said, what they said just now is really impulsive. Transfer is not only about themselves, but also their parents and families, and even the eyes and criticisms of many outsiders. They may not care about these criticisms, but they will certainly be a burden to their parents and relatives. People don't live only for themselves. Qi Chunqing hears the speech and looks at Yi Tian in surprise. He really did not expect that Yi Tian did not take the opportunity to dig the corner, but told the students of Yanhua University. What is a modest gentleman? This is a modest gentleman to the letter. At this time, Yi Tian looked at the students and said, although we don't have to care about other people's opinions and ideas, we have to care about our parents. Therefore, if you want to take time to play or exchange with Nanhai University, I will welcome you with both hands, but you don't need to transfer. Moreover, if it's because of my transfer, there's no need. To be honest, it's hard for you to see me in school. I spend 80% of my time outside school. 80% of the time is not in the campus? Hearing this, a group of students can't help but look at Yanbing in astonishment. They can't believe it. It's unbelievable that a student who is not on campus can have such a strong brain power. It's true that Tian doesn't often stay on campus. The reason why he hasn't been absent recently is that he has some secret feelings. Yanbing nodded with a smile and said slowly. When the words came out, he felt more proud and proud. You know, the reason why Tian has not been absent during this period is not because of anything else, but because she is about to leave Nanhai University. Tian is fulfilling her promise to stay on campus more. The students who originally wanted to transfer to Nanhai University and have more opportunities to communicate with Tian look a little gloomy. They go for Tian. If they turn around, but they can't see Tian, what's the point? So, I hope you think clearly, don't make impulsive choices in your head. Tian chuckled, then turned to look at Shi Chunxing and said, President Shi, you just said you were going to take me to the hospital for an examination. Let's go. Boom! Hearing the word examination, Ying immediately burst into laughter. At this moment, even a fool knows that Tian was just acting. What kind of injury is totally false? How can he test it out? Shi Chunxing hears the sound, just like waking up from a dream, and nods in a hurry. Thank you. After walking out of a distance, Shi Chunxing looks at Tian and says. Just now, he was really worried that Tian would call on the students of Yanhua University to transfer. As a result, not only Yanhua University will suffer, but also many families will have conflicts and many people's fate will change. You're welcome. I will not ruin others' lives and encourage others to make irresponsible choices just because I am different from others. Tian chuckled and shook his head. With a light sentence, his eyes immediately showed the essence and said, of course, if someone provokes me, I will make him regret all his life, just like those overseas exchange students. I will not harm others, will not destroy other people's lives, but if someone provokes me, I will make them regret for life. Shi Chunxing's eyes twitched at the sound. He knows that Tian's words are definitely not joking. He is not only saying it, but also doing it himself. At least, as far as the people he met who provoked Tian are concerned, most of their lives are not so good now. Soon, they came to the hospital and began to examine Tian. According to Shi Chunxing's idea, it was intended that the doctors would write about Tian's condition more seriously. However, after a round of examination, Tian was as healthy as a bull. The doctors had no way to write about it. It was very difficult. Unless they made it up, they could not say that a person who was stronger than normal was injured. There's no need to make up a medical report. It's what it is. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to solve, will it? Tian looks at Shi Chunxing who wants to talk and stops. His eyes change and he says with a smile. Shi Chunxing hears the sound, his eyes are also one lit immediately, and then nodded solemnly. He knows that Tian is right. Foreigners have a strong prejudice against Chinese people. Last night's incident triggered a huge storm of public opinion. He will never give up so easily. There will surely be a bigger storm waiting for them. If we cheat now, maybe we will make those curfew feel that they have caught a rare opportunity. However, regarding the fact that the injury report has not been falsified, I suggest that it should not be disclosed for the time being. Next, Tian looks at Shi Chunxing and says with a smile. Do you mean that there will be people inside the university who will stand on each other's side? Shi Chunxing looked at Tian solemnly. It's impossible to be harmful and defensive. I hope those people will not take this step. Tian smiles and shakes his head, but having said that, he probably feels that the final result is doomed to disappoint people. In this world, there has never been a shortage of garbage that turns outward, turns away from the same race, and helps tyranny for petty profits and personal interests, regardless of right and wrong. I hope so. Shi Chunxing was a little silent, then sighed. He knows who Tian is talking about. He hopes Tian thinks more, but he also knows that, I'm afraid, what Tian says will happen with a high probability. A moment later, they picked up the certificate and left the hospital. Headmaster, what kind of injury has been detected? As soon as Yi Tian and Shi Chunxing came out, many students from Yanhua University came around. Looking at them, they asked eagerly. Guess. Yi Tian hears Yan and looks at a group of students in Yanhua University. He blinks his eyes and smiles with profound meaning. Then he finishes packing the injury report and gives it to the police. Ha ha ha, we don't guess. We already know the result. Well done. That's it. They are black. We are darker than them. When a group of Yanhua University students heard Yi Tian's words, they immediately thought that Yi Tian should have written the injury report seriously. They looked at each other and immediately raised their heads and laughed. Deep in the crowd, Su Hao listened to the words, and his eyes flickered. Finally, he squeezed his fingers tightly. If he made any decision, he turned and ran towards the school gate. Xiaofei in the crowd, seeing Su Hao's action, frowned and immediately ran after him. Yi Tian looks at the figure of these two people and laughs lightly. In this world, there are always so many people who don't open their eyes. Su Hao, what are you going to do? At this time, at the gate of Yanhua University, Xiaofei caught up with Su Hao breathlessly and stopped him. Xiaofei, you've come just in time. Let's go together to expose Yi Tian's deceitful and forged injuries and give this guy an ugly look. Su Hao looked back to see Xiaofei, his face immediately showed joy, loud voice. Su Hao knows that his reputation in Yanhua University is not so high, and he has already stinked. I'm afraid not so many people believe what he said, but Xiaofei is different. He was the #1 scholar in the past and the top genius. His words are highly credible. Moreover, a #1 scholar carefully trained by Yanhua University will report back to the university. This kind of contradiction and contrast will attract more attention and more accusations against Yi Tian. At this moment, he seems to have seen the picture of Yi Tian being spurned by thousands of people, covered with smelly saliva, and even in prison. You are really going to poke things out and report Yi Tian? Haven't you ever thought about who Yi Tian was just trying to help? Just beyond Su Hao's expectation, after hearing his words, Xiaofei not only did not feel happy, but looked at him in consternation, his eyes full of anger. Xiaofei, what are you and I pretending to be? You don't tell me, Yi Tian won you, you don't want to be angry with him in your heart, you don't want to make a good hole of him. I tell you, this is a rare opportunity. Such an opportunity, lost no longer come, a lifetime may be on this one. Wash away the hatred, at this moment, raise one's eyebrows, at this moment Su Hao was stunned, and then laughed wildly, looking at Xiaofei and mocking. Su Hao, you are completely crazy. Yi Tian gang helped us Yanhua University students so much, but now you are so kind? What's more, you are going to help those disgusting overseas exchange students. Do you think they will be grateful to you if you help them with their garbage attitude? I think it is just the opposite. They will only think you are ridiculous and look down on us Chinese people. Between you and Yi Tian, it's just a personal feud, but this time, it's righteousness. Xiaofei looked at Su Hao pitifully, word by word, deep voice scold, hoped to give Su Hao a slap in the head, let him know the way back. Fart, who do you think they are, like you? If I help them, they will certainly benefit me. It's just Yanhua University or a second-class school. If I help them, I will be able to study abroad. By that time, I will be a top turtle student, 10,000 times better than you. When Su Hao heard the speech, he sneered wildly, and his eyes were full of hope. He seemed to have seen that he had studied abroad. After his studies had been successful, he raised his eyebrows and put all his former classmates under his feet, so that they could only look up at his own picture. You are really crazy. There will never be anyone in the world who looks like someone who betrays his own race. Only spit is waiting for you. Xiaofei shook his head and looked into Su Hao's eyes, full of compassion and sympathy. Su Hao, I tell you, don't pretend to be merciful in front of me. Do you think I don't know you? There is no difference between you and me. It's just that I dare to do it and you dare not. Just wait and admire me. When Su Hao heard this, his face was livid, and he gritted his teeth. Envy you? Xiao Fei smiles and shakes his head, continues to look at Su Hao sympathetically, and says, let's not say anything else, I just ask you one thing. Do you think, with Yi Tian's heart, he can't guess that someone will deliberately report him? What's more, you've dealt with him so many times. Have you ever beaten him? A word fell, Su Hao's face immediately pale, changeable, heart appeared a touch of uneasiness. He knew that if he made a mistake, there was no doubt that he would be despised by everyone, or even worse. But think of that slap in the face, think of Yi Tian's smile, his face can't help but be covered by the cold. I don't believe that there are omniscient people in this world, and I don't believe that Yi Tian can expect anything. He didn't deny those words just now, which means that he has done this thing, and the fact will not change. Thinking of this, Su Hao immediately shook his head, put these thoughts behind him, stared at Xiao Fei and said, you can either come with me, or you can get away from me. Don't be in front of me. A mistake is eternal hatred. Su Hao, do you really want to do this? Xiao Fei is silent, but he knows that he can't persuade Su Hao at all. He can only sigh and say, one bullshit slip has become eternal hatred. This time, lousy, it's not a slip. Su Hao laughed ferociously, then strode toward the outside of the school, and said in a loud voice, this time, I want to be prosperous, I want all of you to envy me. Su Hao, you will regret it. It's still time to look back. Xiao Fei looks at Su Hao's back, shakes his head and says in a loud voice. In the past, he only thought that Yi Tian had strong brainpower and powerful force. But this evening, the experience of those overseas exchange students made him realize one thing, that is, Yi Tian's scheming is more powerful. From the beginning to the end, every move of those overseas exchange students is being led by him. Especially when Philip was injured by his companions, although he has no evidence, he can be sure that it must be Yi Tian's fault. Even a balloon full of water dropped from the sky can be manipulated by a strong man. He is stronger than others. How can you defeat him? Therefore, when he saw Su Hao's strange face, he decided to stop him from doing what he shouldn't do. He doesn't feel sympathy for Su Hao, nor does he feel that this guy can turn his back on evil and give up his hostility to Yi Tian. Instead, he feels that Su Hao can't get along with Yi Tian, and he can't look down on Yi Tian. However, he hopes that he can keep a good stand on this big issue of internal and external rights and wrongs, and don't do stupid things, become a traitor, and make people look down on Chinese people. I will never regret this time. But it's a pity that Xiao Fei's obstruction is a pure futility. His words are yelled out, but Xiao Fei has no response, and continues to move forward and disappears in sight. You'll regret it, and I'm afraid you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Xiao Fei stares at Su Hao's back. After a long time, he shakes his head and sighs. Immediately after that, he turned around and walked quickly to the campus of Yanhua University. He had to remind Yi Tian now to prepare for Su Hao. I'm sorry, Yi Tian is gone now. But to Xiao Fei's surprise, he just walked to the downstairs of Yi Tian's hotel under the guidance of his classmates, only to find Yan Bing downstairs. After stopping him, he said with a smile, Teacher Yan, I have a very important thing. I must see Yi Tian now. Otherwise, it will be too late. Xiao Fei sees this, the facial expression immediately becomes nervous, sink a voice way to Yan Bing. Yi Tian said that next, even if the sky collapses, he will not see anyone. If Xiao Fei has something to do with you, you can wait downstairs. When he says that he can see other people, I even put pictures of so-called mothers crying after hearing that their son was arrested in prison. This article reports, let the public opinion completely boiling. Whether at home or abroad, there are a lot of curses. Everyone is criticizing Yanhua University and Yi Tian. They think that they should not treat their overseas friends like this. In particular, the content of an unknown student of Yanhua University named Su Hao dictated the whole story of Yi Tian's tampering with the injury report recorded in the report was exposed, and the public opinion almost fell to one side. Everyone who pays attention to this topic is crazy to spit and curse that such means are extremely despicable, unfair, and unjust. Ding-ling-ling. At this time, compared with the noise of the outside world, it was very quiet in the box of Yanhua University Hotel. Even when the mobile phone rang, Shi Chunqing could not help but have the illusion of thunder exploding in his ears. Okay, I see. Don't worry. There won't be any problem. Shi Chunsheng was stunned. He picked up his mobile phone and connected it. After a few replies, he turned to look at Yi Tian and murmured, "You didn't guess wrong." Su Hao turned back. He went to the person in charge of the overseas exchange students and accused you of tampering with the injury. He told you that you were an unforgivable criminal. Just now, the relevant department informed me that there would be a press conference for the person in charge of overseas exchange students to expose our ugly faces and let the public denounce us. If you know people, you know faces, but you don't know hearts. When the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. The only thing that Yanhua University can weigh among the students is their grades, not their hearts. Only Su Hao can do this. You should feel proud. Yi Tian looks at Shi Chunsheng, smiles and comforts him, and then plays with the taste. However, it seems that the leaders of those overseas exchange students are not very intelligent. They can even believe Su Hao's words. They can only see the side that is good for them, but this matter must be dealt with properly when the fermentation is big, otherwise, there will be big trouble. Shi Chunsheng sighed, shook his head and said nothing more. Then he looked at Yi Tian and said in a deep voice, "Aren't they going to hold a press conference? Let's have a good one too. We don't have to drive it in other places, just across from them. In this way, we can save some money for inviting reporters." Hearing this, Yi Tian raised his eyebrows and then said, "Since they are so ambitious and can't wait to be disappointed, if I don't let them do what they want, I'm sorry for their hard work." www.novelhall.com, the fastest update of. Okay, I'll arrange it. I'll start right away. Shi Chunsheng heard the speech and nodded. Then he glanced around the room and shook his head with a smile. The corners of his mouth were full of fun. Su Hao is really stupid. He has suffered so much in Yi Tian's hands, but he still refuses to change his mind. He doesn't know how to repent at all. Even so, his most stupid thought is that he can defeat Yi Tian by pulling a few foreigners. Is Liang Jingru giving him courage? However, since these people are so full of expectations, as Yi Tian said, it's not too sorry for them not to give them a disappointment. Shi Chunsheng's action is very fast. In a short time, Yanhua University is going to hold a press conference, and he still chooses to be in charge of overseas exchange students. The news that the press conference is opposite immediately spreads. The news has excited all the media and people who pay attention to it. They understand that Yanhua University intends to sing a duel with each other face to face, but they are very curious about which side can win the final victory, or which side can give overwhelming evidence. At least, as far as the current situation is concerned, the witness of Su Hao, a student of Yanhua University, who is in charge of overseas exchange students, has won a lot. As for Yanhua University, they may be innocent, but as long as they can't provide hard evidence, there will be no turning over place for them. Soon, Yi Tian and Shi Chunsheng walk out of the hotel together and take the elevator downstairs. When they see Xiaofei waiting in the hall, Yi Tian nods to him with a smile on his face. Xiaofei wanted to say something, but when he saw the smile on Yi Tian's face, all the words disappeared, and he nodded to Yi Tian. The press conference of overseas exchange students is very fast. Yanhua University is still setting up a platform, but everything is ready for them. Under the stand of the press conference, there are printed news screenshots of overseas media. Punish the murderer severely, fight for blood debts. Huaxia Hospital confirmed that Philip has a severe concussion and will probably never wake up again. Collusion, Huaxia School, Hospital, and Police collude in darkness. A lot of shocking and inflammatory headlines, a lot of bloody, cruel and aggrieved stories, were spread around the press conference site, and a lot of printed text materials were constantly distributed to the media and passers-by who came to watch the situation. Not only these reports, but also many photos of Philip when he was a child, as well as the bright smile photos of those overseas exchange students when they got the corresponding honors in their respective schools. They were also hung around, with white flowers and white candles lit below. If you don't know, I'm afraid you don't think Philip has hung up. These children look like good people, not evil people. How can Yanhua University treat them like this? Yes, is there any misunderstanding in it? It has to be said that these overseas exchange students are really good at playing so well. The provocative photos and words make many people who wait and see begin to murmur and wonder if Yi Tian is really as evil as these people say. Now, the press conference is officially held. At the beginning, I have a word to say. I want to strongly condemn the inhuman and despicable behavior of Yanhua University. I want to make a strong protest to Huaxia and ask you to immediately release our innocent exchange students who are willing to communicate. At this time, the person in charge of the overseas exchange students stepped onto the platform, grasped the microphone, first made a righteous speech, then burst into tears, and said, "Please take a look at these materials, and appeal for justice to our young exchange students who came to this country. They are so kind-hearted. They come here with the wish to communicate and help the Chinese students. They have done nothing wrong, and they should not be hurt so cruelly. They are teachers' students, they are mothers' sons, they are human like thousands of Chinese people. We hope to give the truth and release those children who come to China with enthusiasm. Yes, they are just children." Word by word, sonorous and powerful, more infectious, listening to the audience of those media and passers-by, there is a kind of impulse to cry. Looking at Yi Tian's eyes, it's even more fierce. It's just like Yi Tian's bullying. It's not a group of 20-year-old young people, but a group of baby eaters. Next, let's invite Su Hao, who is righteous and comes forward to tell the truth, to come on stage. Su Hao is an excellent student in Yanhua University, but he was bullied because he didn't want to collude with Yi Tian and do something against his heart. But now, Su Hao chooses not to be silent anymore. He wants to tell his own truth and make all the information public, so that we can see the face of the despicable. Immediately after that, the person in charge leaned over and clapped hard to welcome Su Hao to the floor. "Traitor! You forget, how did those rubbish humiliate us Chinese people? How can you even speak for them? Scum, shameless rubbish! What truth do you have? Get out of here!" At the sight of Su Hao, the students of Yanhua University immediately left their anger one by one. Looking at Su Hao, they drank angrily. But unfortunately, Su Hao turned a blind eye. No matter what others said, he just took everything as it was just a senseless wind. After he went to the room of the person in charge of the overseas exchange students and told him what he wanted, the other party immediately gave him a guarantee, told him that as long as he was willing to cooperate, he would be willing to give a visa, and prepared for him a notice of exemption from the entrance examination of a top university. All of this, compared to the students' a few words of abuse, is nothing. I, Su Hao, a former student of Yanhua University. Thinking of this, Su Hao cleared his throat, raised his head and said in a loud voice. "Former student of Yanhua University?" As soon as Su Hao said this, all the students of Yanhua University immediately became angry. Before Su Hao's student status had been moved away, he had started to cut with Yanhua University so quickly. Such students are a shame of Yanhua University. At this moment, they just hate that Yi Tian didn't start any more before, so heavy that they beat this guy to death. The person in charge of the overseas exchange students on one side is also looking at Su Hao with a funny smile. The eyes, as if watching a clown's performance. I report that Yi Tian deliberately falsifies the injury report, hoping to frame up several kind and respectable overseas exchange students with serious injuries and put them in jail. Otherwise, I ask you, how can a person who has been slapped for several meters in the video stand in front of us now? Not only that, as far as I know, there is a personal feud between Yi Tian and the overseas exchange students. Before they went to Yanhua University, Yi Tian used his kung fu skills to fight against them and hurt the respectable students. Without realizing it, Su Hao continued to raise his head in a righteous voice. Faking injuries and slandering others? Su Hao, a language falls down, the field immediately boils, all people's eyes, all startled uncertain toward Yi Tian to look. As Su Hao said, Yi Tian's current state is really good. He doesn't have any injury at all. Under such circumstances, does it not mean that Su Hao's accusation is really likely to be true, and the injury report is indeed false? In particular, at this moment, Yi Tian and Qi Chunsheng fell into silence. It's just like they don't dare to retort because they know they are wrong. But is it true? Yi Tian knows the answer, and so does Qi Chunsheng. They are just waiting. Waiting for a clown to finish a one-man show, and then fighting back like a storm. Let him understand that the meaning of clown's existence is to make people laugh. Shameless. Mean. Dirty. Dirty. Rubbish, give us justice, release our compatriots, and let out the students who have been falsely accused with enthusiasm. Yes, punish the real murderer severely and release the students. As Su Hao's voice dropped, the venue was in chaos. All the onlookers who supported the overseas exchange students kept shouting and shouting, and their faces were filled with indignation. In their mouth, it was as if the overseas exchange students were just like the white lotus blossoming in the morning, delicate, pure and delicate. Audience friends, hello, I'm Richard from BBA TV station. I'm reporting to you outside Yenhua University. The overseas exchange students were falsely accused of being put into prison. Now there is a new step forward. Now, the students of Yenhua University stand up and expose the ugly face of the #1 university in China. We are also urging the university to punish the real culprit, give an explanation and release our exchange students. Not only that, but also a reporter holding a microphone, his back to the noisy crowd, filled with indignation, and then said, Yenhua University is the most advanced university in China. Such a dark thing happened in such a top university, which shows how dark China is. I can't imagine what would happen if it happened in Cambridge or Oxford, or Harvard or Caltech in the United States. I'm afraid the president has resigned and the person in charge has begun to apologize. Maybe this is the difference between China and the West, the difference between barbarism and civilization. In a word, it's extremely poignant. If you don't know the truth, I'm afraid you've got the mind of Yenhua University. Moreover, some onlookers who don't know the truth around them are even more unhappy about Yenhua University. After all, according to the statement at the moment, it seems that Yenhua University has done something wrong and has been promoted to the height of the whole country and nation. Is it time? Shi Chunxing looked at the scenes under the stage, turned his head and looked at the calm-looking Yi Tian, and asked slowly. It's time to start. Yi Tian smiles and nods. Looking at Shi Chunxing, he says. When Shi Chunxing heard the speech, he immediately did not have any hesitation. He picked up the receiver and said in a loud voice, Everyone, be quiet. We also have a speech to say. Cut, you say a fart, evil Chinese guy, let people go. Yes, if you want to talk, let people go, otherwise, don't dream. Let go now. In my opinion, Yenhua University and Huaxia First are the most black and evil schools in the world, but as soon as Shi Chunxing's voice came out, there was a series of angry shouts waiting for him. The sound was so loud that he could not hear a syllable. Everyone be quiet, let's finish what we have to say, okay? Shi Chunxing was shocked. He grabbed the microphone and kept calling out, trying to make the crowd quiet. Unfortunately, even if he was about to split his voice, there was no way to make the noisy crowd quiet and give him a chance to speak. Be quiet. Yi Tian saw this, frowned slightly, and immediately the manna turned, then he suddenly opened his mouth. Boom! This simple sound, just for export, makes everyone feel like an earth-shaking thunder, suddenly exploding in everyone's ears. The terrible volume makes their heads hum, their ears keep buzzing, and even their eardrums seem to burst. Especially those foreigners who are watching the live broadcast of BBA TV station, after hearing this sound, they suddenly have an absurd illusion. It seems that they are not watching a press conference, but watching a live broadcast on the battlefield, and they have heard the terrible sound of bomb explosion. But the original clamorous scene, instantly calmed down, everyone's eyes, all toward the location of Yi Tian, come together. Hello everyone, I'm Yi Tian, whom Su Haogung just said, who was accused by you of forging injuries and beating a group of White Lotus exchange students. Yi Tian, taking advantage of the moment of quietness, glanced at the scene and then said, just now, Su Hao accused me of forging the injury certificate. Then, I want to tell you one thing, that is, Su Hao's accusation is groundless, he is lying, and I didn't forge the injury report. Boom! When Yi Tian's words fall, everyone under the stage immediately turns into a pot of porridge. The responsible persons of the overseas exchange students also look at each other, and then look at Su Hao with perplexed faces. Su Hao, as he said before, vowed that Yi Tian had forged the injury report. How can Yi Tian deny it now? Is it because he feels that things have become so big that he deliberately plays tricks on others, or is the information Su Hao has heard untrue and unreliable? What are you talking about? Now things are getting worse. You said you didn't falsify the injury report and didn't repeat your injury? Do you think we're all idiots? Let me ask you something else. If you are seriously injured, can you be so mean when you just speak? Su Hao hears these words, the facial expression also follows a fluster, to the leaf day loudly scolds away. The approval of Yi Tian is directly related to whether he can successfully get the admission invitation of overseas universities and whether he can get the visa he cherishes. If he is denied by Yi Tian, then all his efforts have failed? Therefore, he wants to criticize Yi Tian, let Yi Tian lose all face in front of everyone, and even let Yi Tian become the object of all people's unified crusade, and let Yi Tian go to jail. In this way, he can let himself avenge himself and let Yi Tian pay the price of bleeding and tears for what he did. Yes, injured people, where do you have such a loud voice? It's not just the injured people who don't have such a big voice as him. Even the uninjured people don't have such a big voice as him, okay? Haha, boy, don't pretend to be silly here. We are all adults. We are not blind. Can't we see whether you are really injured or not? Su Hao's words fell down, and the people who still feel that there seems to be an echo in their ears immediately have a brain ACHE, and then echo. Su Hao saw this scene, his face immediately showed a smile, elated looking at Yi Tian, that expression, as if to say, I see what you have to say. Who told you that I wrote serious injury on the injury report? But at this time, Yi Tian suddenly looks at Su Hao as if he were a fool, and says faintly. What? When Su Hao heard the sound, he was stunned. The smile on his face suddenly solidified, and he was on the edge of dullness. He has always believed that Yi Tian forged the injury report and deliberately wrote about how serious the injury was. But now, Yi Tian said that he didn't write any serious injury in the injury report. How could he not accept that he was the winner? What's more, he couldn't understand why Yi Tian didn't write the contents of the injury report seriously. After all, before Yi Tian said that ambiguous you guess, the meaning of which is self-evident. It can't be said that this guy is smart. As early as that time, he guessed that he might deal with him from this aspect, so he made preparations early. If so, doesn't this man have the amazing ability of foretelling? Since you didn't hear me clearly, I'll repeat that I didn't make a fake in the examination report, and what I wrote is not serious injury. Yi Tian smiled calm, looking at Su Hao, and light said a word. This sentence made Su Hao's whole body feel bad for a moment. His hands and feet trembled wildly. What's the situation of Nima's? Not only him, but also the responsible parties of those overseas exchange students frowned at Su Hao one by one. Their eyes were full of displeasure and questioning. It seemed that they were saying, aren't you sure? What's going on now? You make it clear to us. How could that be? It's impossible. Yi Tian must have cheated on the medical report. It's a sure thing. This guy doesn't have the ability to foretell, and he was so proud at that time. He certainly didn't expect to sell him secretly. Su Hao stares at Yi Tian tightly. His eyes are constantly changing. Finally, his eyes suddenly brighten. He points to Yi Tian and says in a loud voice, I know. Your current medical report is also false. You know something is wrong, so you deliberate to discuss with the police department, and then work together to make a false medical report, so that you can escape the responsibility. You are really crows at the bottom of the pot, black on top of black. Boom. As soon as Su Hao's words fell, everyone's eyes immediately focused on Yi Tian's body. His face was changeable, and everyone felt that Su Hao's words seemed reasonable. After all, as long as you are a normal person, when you encounter the previous situation, you will try your best to write the examination report heavier, so that the other party can pay a higher price. At the beginning, the writing is heavy, but now it is changed to light. What does that mean? It means that there is a dark curtain in the middle. It is Yi Tian and the police who are working together to do it intentionally. Our poor classmates, what did they do wrong? They were framed by you. They come with a heart of helping Chinese students and conducting friendly exchanges, but what they are waiting for is your shameless and vicious trap. You rubbish, don't your conscience hurt when you do these things? In a flash, all the overseas people in the field were boiling, pointing to Yi Tian and yelling at him. They feel that they have seen the truth, as if they saw Yi Tian and the police working together to make these despicable acts. And the students of Yanhua University, at the moment, also fell into silence, one by one eyes flow, dare not speak. Yi Tian's reply was also beyond their expectation. Yi Tian's previous sentence you guess also made them feel that Yi Tian should have written a very serious injury report. Now, Yi Tian flatly denies that how can they not feel that there may be some dark scenes in the middle. You see, they are afraid to speak. What does that mean? It means that they are afraid. They have ghosts in their hearts. When Su Hao saw that a group of students in Yanhua University were silent, his eyes lit up immediately, and he pointed out to them in a loud voice. Nonsense, who said we were afraid? Who says we have ghosts in our hearts? Su Hao, I used to only know about your garbage, but I didn't expect that you were so rubbish. Do you forget that we are compatriots? It's a shame for us Yanhua University that you are such a scum to be admitted to Yanhua University. All the students of Yanhua University looked up at Su Hao and drank angrily. In fact, for them, what makes them feel more angry and unacceptable than what the organizers of overseas exchange students have done is what Su Hao has done and what he has said. Who are they? They are compatriots whose blood is thicker than water. They are classmates who share cold and heat. But now, Su Hao betrays his compatriots and classmates. It's the feeling of being stabbed that makes people feel the most painful and uncomfortable. Haha, I will not be your compatriot or your classmate soon. I have a bright future. I can go out and breathe the sweet and free air. As for you, you are waiting to continue to suffer and bear the darkness here. Chinese, I don't want to do it. When Su Hao heard these words, he was not angry. On the contrary, he laughed wildly. What's more, he could not hide his pride. Chinese, I don't want to do it. This word's fall let the students of Yanhua University immediately clench their fists. The face showed a strong resentment. Why, you want to hit me? Come on, let them all see how you treat your former compatriots and former classmates? When Su Hao saw this scene, he became more and more arrogant, choking his neck, patting his chest, yelling and jumping up and down, which made a lot of noise. Students, we are human beings. Why should we have the same opinion as a garbage man? However, Su Hao, I want to send you a message. People who do not respect their own origin, their own country and nation, no matter where they go, will not be looked down upon by others. You think you are insulting us, but in fact, you are insulting yourself. If you don't believe it, you can look at the faces of those around you. But at this time, Yi Tian raised his hand in motion to the students of Yanhua University to be quiet. Then he looked at Su Hao and said faintly. Su Hao's face sank. He turned his head and looked at the responsible persons of the overseas exchange students around him. He saw that although these people had restrained their expressions, the look in his eyes was really a bit of fun and ridicule. Do they really look down on me? Su Hao's heart sank. All of a sudden, there was a feeling that he couldn't tell the truth. His face was even hotter. Since you said that I had a black curtain with the police, I'd like to invite you to watch a video. I think that after you see it, you should have a judgment in your heart about what the truth is. But Yi Tian didn't give him so many opportunities to think about it. Seeing this scene, he turned around and nodded to Qi Chunsheng. Qi Chunsheng heard the sound and immediately motioned to the staff nearby. Before long, someone immediately moved a TV set, connected it to the computer and began to play it. In the picture, Yi Tian and Qi Chunsheng are in the hotel. There is no communication between them. Qi Chunsheng occasionally walks around in the hotel room and gets up to stretch out. However, Yi Tian is just half lying on the sofa, slightly squinting his eyes, as if he is asleep. Time went on and on for nearly an hour or two. Neither Yi Tian nor Qi Chunsheng did anything. Immediately, the screen followed the jump to the police side. At the beginning of the video, it was shot by the hospital monitoring, and it was a picture of Yi Tian's injury test. As time went on, the camera drew closer, and the doctor began to write Yi Tian's illness report. Every word was clearly written. The above content was that there was no obvious injury, it was a slight injury. Not only that, after the doctor finished recording, he handed the injury test to the police. This time, the object of recording became the police's law enforcement recorder. All the contents were extremely clear. After the injury report was handed in, it was sealed and stored in the evidence room after it was written into the file. Immediately, the lens is fixed, and the time on the screen is constantly beating. Obviously, this group of pictures, shot, should be the whole process of the injury report from the book to the storage. From the beginning to the end, the pictures are marked with the specific time, which is very clear. Moreover, although it is a double speed, you can feel that the whole process, even several transitions, is a mirror to the end, and there is no editing trace at all. The camera in the evidence room is still working. If you want to see if anyone moves it in the future, you can apply to the police station for transfer. Of course, if you think the video is fake, you can also identify the video, determine the date and time of shooting, and determine whether it has any traces of editing. In the field of vision, Tian spoke faintly, and then looked at the responsible people of those overseas exchange students with a smile. He said faintly, "What's the age now? You are still using pictures and words to attack public opinion. Aren't you more convincing with videos?" At this moment, the leaders of a group of overseas exchange students, as well as those foreign journalists, are all silent, and their faces are as ugly as eating a fly. They thought that this must be the death of the whole Tian. Can where wanna get their hard work, unexpectedly so easy to be broken by Tian. Moreover, as Tian said, the content of the video is more direct, more intuitive, a mirror to the end, time and date labeling. It has ruled out the possibility of counterfeiting. How could this be in Su Hao, also face like earth color, pale intersection, a heart, such as is falling to the abyss?